Chapter 166. I'm so sad. Dark Mountain is fighting so hard. But not only are our monthly votes not close to the third place, we're being left behind by the third place, and the fifth place is catching up. We're full of passion and fighting with our lives on the line. Not only are there no cheers, flowers, or applause, but there's also a basin of cold water poured over our heads. It's so cold. Is this all we have? The promised fourth watch, Dark Mountain will erupt. Those who support Dark Mountain, please vote for Dark Mountain. I'll crawl away and write my story. Hiss. Deep in the sea, demonic aura surged. A figure did not even activate his protective aura. Only his feet were spurting out vigorous origin power as he advanced forward at an astonishing speed. The water behind him was water. The spurting of origin power gave him a huge rebound force, pushing his body forward quickly. However, the water in front of him was like air, without any resistance. This figure was Chen Hao. Chen Hao did not hide his aura. Instead, he chose the most direct route to advance toward his target. He, who had just stepped into the 9th grade martial emperor level, could not wait to fight. Why would he hide his aura? However, what Chen Hao did not expect was that his speed was too fast. He was so fast that when the nearby demonic beast sensed his aura and rushed over, he was already far away. The demonic beasts underwater could not catch up to him. Occasionally, he would meet the lone demonic beasts head-on. He would summon 9 flying daggers and immerse his mind into the flying daggers. Using an extremely strange method, he would kill them violently as if he was cutting vegetables and watermelons. The aura of these demonic beasts were obviously 2 grades stronger than the first group. They had the strength of a 3rd grade martial grandmaster. A few of them could even reach the 4th or 5th grade. However, under Chen Hao's flying daggers, they were no challenge at all. He advanced triumphantly. Unknowingly, he had easily crossed a distance of nearly 1,000 miles. Finally, he encountered another wave of demonic beasts. This time when Chen Hao arrived, he was the first to arrive within 100 miles. As for whether other people had arrived before him, Chen Hao was not sure. However, without any hesitation, he excitedly charged into the wave of demonic beasts. Kill. Kill. The densely packed monstrous beasts, upon seeing the only cultivator who had intruded into their territory, immediately rushed over in a frenzy. These monstrous beasts were not as strong as the solitary monstrous beasts, but their numbers were too astonishing. Moreover, they were all fearless as they charged forward wave after wave. Kill. 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 Chen Hao used both his hands and feet. His flying daggers flashed, and his mind was completely immersed in the massacre. Fist, palm, leg, all of these were used to vent his violent strength, and he fought to his heart's content. The flying daggers were the beginning of Chen Hao's practice of merging with the world. Chen Hao was clear that when he was able to instantly grasp the life trajectory and texture of a demonic beast's hard shell, it would be the moment when the flying daggers would tear it apart. Kill, kill. Kill, 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 kill. 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 Kill, kill. Kill. Kill, 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 kill. 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 After venting his anger in these low-level demonic beasts, Chen Hao did not waste any more time, and once again began to move forward quickly. As they went deeper into the ruins, the solitary demonic beasts became stronger and stronger. Under normal circumstances, when encountering these demonic beasts, cultivators would avoid them. When they arrived at the first ruin area, Chen Hao also avoided them. But this time, Chen Hao, who had realized his true strength, no longer dodged. Chen Hao did not dodge the demonic beasts with the battle prowess of a rank 6 martial great master, rank 7 martial great master, and even rank 8 martial great master. If they met, they would fight. If they fought, they would kill. It seemed like there was no challenge at all. A monstrous beast with the battle prowess of a rank 8 martial ancestor was, at best, similar to the rank 5 martial ancestor Zhou Xiao. But after a short period of half a month, they no longer posed any threat to Chen Hao. After 5,000 miles, a bright light curtain appeared in front of Chen Hao's eyes. He raised the token and with a hiss, Chen Hao once again stepped into the second ruin area. 8th. The instant Chen Hao stepped into the ruin area, in the sky above the endless sea, Chen Hao's name once again became the object of astonishment for the experts of the various sections. Furthermore, they were clearly much more astonished than the first time. The reason was very simple. At this moment, Chen Hao's ranking had risen to 43rd place. This attracted the attention of the majority of people. Last time, when he entered the ruin area in 10th place, the rankings were still unknown. Many people more or less thought that it was luck. However, after the rankings came out, no one thought that Chen Hao was lucky anymore. And now, he was entering the second ruin area in 8th place. This proved this point even more. Amazing! Leng Yihan, a rank 8 martial emperor, entered the ruin area in 4th place twice. Chen Hao was 10th once, and 8th this time. They are both rank 8 martial emperors. These two people are both very young. In a situation where their cultivations are far inferior, their performances are actually so astonishing. Their futures are limitless. Indeed, it would appear that we have no hope. Geniuses like them will definitely be chosen by the high-level sections. This is especially true for that Leng Yihan. Right now, his ranking has risen to 5th place. I'm afraid that many of those experts whose names have disappeared were killed by him. That child, no one can compare to him. Chen Hao is also not simple. He must have also killed experts to rise to 43rd place. It's still too early to say that. After all, this is only the initial test. So what if he is 1st place? The only advantage of being in the top 10 is that he is a seeded participant. In the end, the rankings will still have to be determined on the stage. At that time, it is not impossible for him to die on the stage. Who? Chen Hao raised his head and looked at the second underwater world. The astonishment in his eyes was no longer present. Although he was still astonished, it did not mean much to Chen Hao. Chen Hao knew that if other disciples came in, they would be very shocked and pleasantly surprised. This was because not only was the heaven and earth spirit qi in this space denser, it was also filled with a higher level of energy, the energy of the 5 elements. In this energy, Chen Hao caught a trace of the 5 elements' spiritual roots. It was not that there were 5 elements' spiritual roots here, but that the 5 elements' energy here contained a mysterious aura that could help cultivators comprehend. He could even sense the faint aura of the 5 elements operation. Without a doubt, it would be easier for the disciples to comprehend the 5 elements' energy if they cultivated here. Chen Hao could not help but sigh. The sects in the world of cultivation were indeed not something that any empire could compare to. Just the experience of the 100 empire ranking disciples was nothing in their eyes. However, they had specially opened up such a powerful space. And it seemed that the further one went, the more powerful it would be. One could imagine how powerful the experts of these sects were. Just this second level alone took 2 months. It seems that it really allows people to comprehend the 5 elements' energy. Unfortunately, it is not of much use to me. Chen Hao stared at this magical space and said in his mind, "Let's begin." Okay. The treasure-hunting sword spirit said excitedly. This was a good thing for him. Although the 5 elements' energy was not of a high level, it tasted much better than origin energy. Furthermore, the treasure-hunting sword spirit could sense that the aura of the spiritual herbs here were obviously spiritual herbs of the 5 elements. He was used to eating cornbread. Suddenly, there was a steamed bun. Although it was not fish or meat, it was still much better. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Chen Hao moved like lightning. At the beginning, when the treasure-hunting sword spirit felt that he was being watched, he still had some scruples and did some things to deceive others. However, when that feeling disappeared, he no longer had any scruples and began to harvest without restraint. Before the large group of cultivators could arrive, he had already plundered everything within a radius of a few 100 miles. There were all kinds of powerful 5 elements spiritual herbs, and there were more than 1,000 of them. Chen Hao did not stop after he was done with this area. He continued to plunder into the distance. As for whether the others could even drink the soup after they came in, he did not care. Strange. The treasure-hunting sword spirit suddenly spoke in Chen Hao's mind after he had plundered a full 100 miles to the left. What's wrong? There are still many spiritual herbs within a radius of a few dozen miles to the left. However, there is not a single spiritual herb's aura after that. Obviously, they have been plundered. It's still decreasing. Not even one? It's still decreasing? Chen Hao asked in surprise. That's why it's strange. You can do it because I'm here. How can this disciple be so sensitive to spiritual herbs? What a fast speed. They're all heading straight for the spiritual herbs. The treasure-hunting sword spirit said in shock. Although he was not sensitive to the aura of cultivators, he could clearly sense the location of the spiritual herbs. However, as he spoke, the two spiritual herbs closest to each other, which were more than 10 kilometers apart, had been plundered. It was obvious that the other party had gone straight for the spiritual herbs and did not spend any time searching for them. There's always someone better than you. Don't be surprised. Since there's someone like you, there must be someone stronger than you. Snatch. I don't care who he is. Chen Hao said in his mind. Let's snatch then. We'll snatch the good ones first. The treasure-hunting sword spirit said with a high fighting spirit. There had never been anything that could threaten his ability to sense spiritual herbs and treasures. How could he admit defeat? Faster, faster. Can you go faster? Chen Hao, your speed is not good. Obviously, you're not as fast as that guy. If you lose, it's your responsibility. I've already raised my speed to the limit. Hearing the treasure-hunting sword spirit's urging, Chen Hao was also shocked. At that moment, his speed had indeed been raised to the limit. However, he was still not as fast as his opponent. Chen Hao knew very well that although he was only a 9th grade martial emperor, he had will and martial spirit dual bodies. Purely based on this characteristic, his speed was comparable to a 5th grade martial grandmaster. Moreover, he had also comprehended the true essence of wind, and was able to merge with the air. How fast was his opponent's speed? Or rather, how high was his opponent's cultivation level? Is someone trying to snatch it? A figure flickered in the air. Every time it flickered, it covered a distance of 10,000 feet. It was as if the space was being torn apart. Its speed was astonishingly fast. It was not something Chen Hao could compare with. Even when the figure appeared, the surrounding space was hazy and faintly discernible. The energy of heaven and earth within 100 feet would crazily gather towards it. It was impossible to see the appearance of the figure clearly. It was not even clear whether it was a man or a woman. One could only vaguely know that it was a person. Chapter 167. Third update. Dark Mountain continues to edit the fourth update. Brothers and sisters with monthly votes, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. Suddenly, a strange ripple was emitted from the forehead of that figure. Everything within a circumference of 100 miles, not only the spiritual herbs, even the grass, the trees, the sand and the stones were clearly displayed in his mind. Even Chen Hao's figure that had completely merged with the air and was rapidly flying did not escape that figure's perception. Wind attribute true essence, operating the 5 elements, and containing a trace of yin and yang, and an aura that has merged with all things in the world. After that figure captured Chen Hao's aura, he immediately opened his eyes wide in shock. Soon after, he sensed again. Rank 9 Martial Emperor, boundless essence. What a vigorous and masculine aura. Could it be him? That figure slightly frowned. His thin lips slightly curled up into a charming smile. At this moment, his incomparably sharp sword-like eyes shone. Immediately, the surrounding heaven and earth dimmed slightly. Within his eyes, it was as if stars had exploded. It was breathtaking. Whoosh! His figure suddenly swayed, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared on the spot. The other party stopped. Chen Hao was slightly stunned. Soon after, he frowned and said, "Could it be that they discovered us and are rushing over? Hide your aura first. I can sense the situation of the spiritual herbs. However, a cultivator's aura needs to be within a certain range. With the other party's speed, they are definitely an expert." The treasure-hunting sword spirit said. "Amen." Chen Hao replied. He did not have the slightest bit of fear. He knew very well that the other party was definitely an expert. Furthermore, they possessed extremely valiant abilities. However, after comprehending the true essence of the wind attribute, Chen Hao was confident that he would have no problems protecting himself. After putting away the spiritual herbs beside him, Chen Hao directly turned into a gust of wind and merged with heaven and earth. However, he did not go far. He wanted to see exactly who it was that was even more valiant in sensing spiritual herbs than him, who possessed the treasure-hunting sword spirit. In Chen Hao's mind, if the other party were to come and find him, they would definitely be able to determine his location based on the location of the spiritual herbs, and not because they sensed him. Sure enough, they came. After a while, the voice of the treasure-hunting sword spirit sounded in Chen Hao's mind. Chen Hao immediately retracted his aura, and locked his gaze in the direction the treasure-hunting sword spirit was sensing. At this moment, Chen Hao still did not sense anything. After a while, a figure flashed in the void 1,000 feet away and disappeared again. Even with Chen Hao's abnormal eyesight, he was unable to capture the other party's appearance. So powerful. He must have comprehended the true essence of the space attribute, right? Chen Hao's eyes flashed with intense shock as he thought to himself. The other party's speed could not be described as flying at all. It was more like shuttling through the air. Compared to Yi Mingho, who had comprehended spatial energy, he was now many times stronger and faster. Therefore, in an instant, Chen Hao was certain that the other party had not simply comprehended spatial energy, but had comprehended its true essence. Just as Chen Hao was still immersed in that fleeting glimpse of the other party's silhouette, something that shocked Chen Hao even more happened. That figure appeared again. Chen Hao was able to see it clearly, but it appeared right in front of him. A pair of sharp sword-like eyes were flickering with a bright light as they stared straight at Chen Hao. No need to hide. The true essence of the wind attribute cannot escape my senses. The other party's lips curled up slightly as he stared straight at Chen Hao, who was hidden in the air, and spoke. You're Leng Yihan? After sensing the other party's aura, Chen Hao no longer concealed himself and slowly revealed himself. He stared at the other party's soul-stirring eyes and spoke with a calm voice. Chen Hao, how do you know me? Chen Hao asked with a frown. After being your scapegoat for so long, you still can't guess? Among rank 8 martial emperors of similar age, only you and I have the ability to challenge martial ancestor realm cultivators. You are the first person to be able to face me so calmly. It seems that you really do possess a top-quality 5 elements fusion spirit artifact. You want to snatch it. Chen Hao's pupils constricted. His pitch-black eyes instantly flashed with a fierce aura, and a surge of battle intent instantly soared into the sky. Seeing Chen Hao's appearance, Leng Yihan frowned slightly. Then he actually revealed a slight smile. Instead, he withdrew his aura and said, The way of nature to merge with all things in the world. Who taught you that? Don't be surprised and don't hide it, because I also know how to. Not allowing Chen Hao to speak, Leng Yihan's aura suddenly merged with the air. His figure was clearly in front of him, but in Chen Hao's perception, there was no difference between him and the surrounding air. Even more astonishing was that with a flash of his blade, an ore of unknown material rapidly changed shape in his hand. In an instant, it became Chen Hao's current appearance. It was extremely lifelike and lifelike. Go, I've said what I need to say. Step into the cultivation world. If someone from the secular world learns of your carving skills, remember, say that you received the teachings of an old man by chance. As for where you met him and what he looks like, you can make up your own story. Remember, don't expose me. Also, don't become enemies with the person who asked you. Treat him as an elder. Go. I'm sleepy. Chen Hao's heart trembled. The words his father said before he left appeared in his mind. He originally felt that such a possibility was almost non-existent. But now, before he had even truly stepped into the cultivation world, it had already happened. Even stranger was that the person who asked him was actually a disciple of the 100 Empire ranking. Furthermore, he was only 1 or 2 years older than him. His talent and battle power were likely much higher than his. Shocking, there was nothing more shocking than this. At this instant, Chen Hao felt that his trump cards and advantages seemed to have disappeared in front of the youth before him. Taking a deep breath, Chen Hao stared at Leng Yihan and said, By chance, I received the teachings of an old man. How did you learn it? Was it also that old man who taught you? Chen Hao naturally could not treat him as an elder. Moreover, Chen Hao guessed that the nameless old man must have a deep relationship with his father. As for what kind of relationship, Chen Hao did not know. But one thing was certain, his father was hiding. And could this Lung Yihan in front of him be the disciple of the nameless old man in the secular world? It was very likely. The teachings of an old man? What does he look like? How old is he? Can you carve him for me to see? Hearing Chen Hao's words, Lung Yihan was actually a little excited. Involuntarily, to Chen Hao's surprise, there was a slight change in his voice. Although this change was very faint, Chen Hao could not help but think of the damned eunuch Yin Fenghan. What does the one who taught you look like? Carve it for me to see. Perhaps it's a person, Chen Hao said. My master is definitely not the one who taught you, because I am her only disciple in the secular world. But I can show you, Lung Yihan said. As he spoke, he quickly drew his sword. In the blink of an eye, a figure appeared in front of Chen Hao's eyes. However, this figure was wearing a bamboo hat, a veil, and a loose robe. It was impossible to see the face or even the figure. The nameless old man. Chen Hao thought of the records about the nameless old man, and was immediately even more certain of Lung Yihan's identity. My master is the nameless old man. I only know of her appearance. It's your turn. Lung Yihan's sharp eyes had disappeared. At this moment, they were extremely clear. He stared at Chen Hao with bright eyes and said expectantly. Chen Hao's expression did not change. However, a thought flashed in his mind. Immediately, a saber light flashed as he quickly drew his saber. A small piece of purple crystal jade turned into a lifelike old man in an instant. The old man's appearance was similar to his father, Chen Hai, but he looked older. He stood with his hands behind his back, as if he had merged with the world. Chen Hao was making things up, but he did not make things up according to his father's wishes. That would have been too fake. He could not make it truly lifelike. But now this figure was the appearance of his father's life that Chen Hao had captured decades later, with only a slight change. Can you give this to me? I'll give you this in exchange. It's more valuable than your purple crystal jade, and it's also very useful for you. Lung Yihan took out a fist-sized milky white crystal that exuded an extreme yin aura and handed it to Chen Hao. Good stuff. Yuanyin crystal. Chen Hao, take it. You need it, but I seem to need it more. Treasure hunting sword spirit said in Chen Hao's mind. Okay. Chen Hao took the Yuanyin crystal and gave the statue to Lung Yihan. I have a few more questions. Please tell me. This is very important to my master. After Lung Yihan put away the statue, he stared at Chen Hao. There was no threat in his words. Instead, there was a hint of pleading. Ask away. But since you've asked, you have to answer a few questions of mine, Chen Hao said. Okay. Where did you meet the old man? What do you know about him? I met him in the Magic Cloud Mountain range of our Xuanwu Empire. I accidentally entered the depths of the Magic Cloud Mountain range and encountered a powerful monster. I almost lost my life, but the old man saved me and taught me this carving technique. After sending me out of the Magic Cloud Mountain range, the old man left. The old man didn't say anything else. He didn't even tell me his name. Chen Hao chose his words carefully, and his expression carried a trace of regret as he spoke. Was he alone or with two people? I mean, was there anyone with him? No. There was only one person. Is it possible that he lived in seclusion in the Magic Cloud Mountain range? I don't know. When did you meet him? 3 years ago, Chen Hao said. Okay, I have no more questions. Thank you. If you have any questions, just ask. Do you know the old man? He taught me the art of carving, but I don't even know his name. I can't thank him, Chen Hao said. I don't know him, but he might be the person my master is looking for. Because of him, my master stayed in the secular world for more than 100 years until she met me. After teaching me the art of carving, she left. If you want to know, when the 100 Empire ranking is over, I can take you to my master. She should want to see you and ask you personally. Looking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you. Try to get the 4th update before 12. Chapter 168. Okay. Chen Hao agreed without hesitation. At this point, even if Chen Hao did not go, they would still come looking for him. Moreover, Chen Hao was also very curious about the relationship between the nameless old man and his father. Then it's settled. I'll take the blame for you. With your current strength, even if you have that superb combination spiritual weapon, I'm afraid there are several groups that can kill you in seconds. You'd better not show yourself for the time being. If you're exposed, you may be in trouble. Also, don't go searching for spiritual herbs. Those who can reach here are all top experts. If you meet them, they won't be as good as me. Of course, it's also a coincidence that you're related to me. As for the others, I've already killed them. Goodbye. Lung Yihan cupped his fists and said. As soon as he finished speaking, his aura returned to normal. His figure flashed and disappeared in front of Chen Hao. This person is strange. The treasure-hunting sword spirit said in Chen Hao's mind. What's strange? I can't tell exactly, but his aura, especially when he's excited, seems to change a lot. In short, it's a little abnormal. A little. Chen Hao also had the same feeling, but he could not tell what was strange. He's very strong. For now you're probably not as strong as him. What's there to estimate? He has comprehended the spatial quintessence, and his speed is faster than mine. I can't hide from his senses. My carving skills are also inferior to his. Moreover, although he's also a martial emperor, the terrifying aura he emits, especially the light in his eyes, makes me feel like I'm suppressed by absolute power. Chen Hao said with a frown. Since he said so, it seems like I'm really lucky. If he didn't take the blame, I would be in big trouble. A few hours later, a large number of cultivators rushed into the ruins. Some areas were still fine, but the areas that Chen Hao and Lung Yihan had searched had no spiritual herbs left. These cultivators were forced to flock to the sides. Chen Hao, on the other hand, found a cave in one of the areas he had plundered and began to cultivate. Shi Yan had comprehended the mysteries of the liquid energy gasification. It was a reversible process. Although there were some differences in the transformation of the gaseous energy into the liquid state, the differences shouldn't be too big. Therefore, Chen Hao did not waste any time before sensing the aura of the ruins. Seeing Lung Yihan, Chen Hao's confidence was boosted, and he became vigilant again. He also understood that he was not the only one with a trump card. The 100 Empire ranking was a place where geniuses gathered. Without sufficient strength, showing off one's ability meant that one could die prematurely. Strength was everything. After Chen Hao immersed himself in cultivation, the other cultivators also entered the state of cultivation in just a few days. No one was willing to waste this excellent opportunity to comprehend the energy of the 5 elements. As for the ruins, they could only be found by chance. It was necessary to grab hold of what was in front of him first. 2 months passed in a flash. Chen Hao still had not sensed the aura of the ruins. He had been immersed in his comprehension and cultivation. After 2 months of tempering, the energy in his dantian had become more condensed and vigorous. It was twice as vigorous as 2 months ago, and there was already a hint of liquefaction. Finally, they began to charge again. This was also the last trial in the Endless Sea. After 10,000 miles, they would encounter more powerful demonic beasts and demonic beast tides. Once they charged over, they would reach the core of the Endless Sea and step into the next trial. In the sky above the Endless Sea, when the ruins area collapsed and all the disciples began to charge again, the ranking on the Black Tower tablet changed again. Lung Yihan was 4th. His ranking rose by 1 place again. Dongfang Ting looked at Chen Hao's name and frowned slightly. According to the trend last time, Chen Hao should be able to rise by several places again, especially since he was the 8th to enter the 2nd ruins area. Unexpectedly, Chen Hao's ranking fell instead of rising, although it was only dropping by 2 places. But it also showed that Chen Hao's performance this time only had a little advantage in speed. In other aspects, he did not show enough fighting strength. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the sea, Chen Hao's speed had increased a lot compared to 2 months ago. However, Chen Hao did not rush to the core area. Even if he reached there earlier, there would be no relics or elixirs to find this time. It was only the exit of the Endless Sea. Rather than waiting there, it was better to kill demonic beasts in the sea and train himself. After charging through the demonic beast tide with only the fighting strength of a 5th-grade martial grandmaster, Chen Hao began to look for demonic beasts with strong auras. After crazily hunting and challenging dozens of demonic beasts with the fighting strength of an 8th-grade martial grandmaster, more than 2 days had passed. At this time, Chen Hao began to think about the exit of the core area of the Endless Sea. 3 days' time. This was the last 10,000 miles of the sea to train. Basically, as long as the cultivators were not dead, they could make it. If they could not, they could only walk out of the Endless Sea. In the sky above the Endless Sea, Dong Fangting originally thought that Chen Hao would still be able to enter the core area of the Endless Sea. However, after waiting for a long time, when a large number of cultivators were rushing in, Chen Hao still did not enter. Seeing that the transportation formation of the core area was about to open, and they would step into the next level of training, Chen Hao still did not arrive. Did something happen? Dong Fangting began to worry. At this moment, the names on the pagoda monument had not changed yet. Therefore, they were not sure about Chen Hao's situation. However, after the previous 2 changes, hundreds of names had disappeared from the pagoda monument. This also meant that hundreds of people had died in the training. Xian also frowned. However, she was feeling very conflicted at this moment. On one hand, she was looking forward to Chen Hao's appearance, but on the other hand, she was a little worried that after Chen Hao appeared, he would not be under her control and enter another sect. She had enjoyed the taste of being the #1 person in the Xuanwu Empire for so many years. She really did not want Chen Hao to take this title away. Being able to enter her sect was naturally the best situation. Lung Yihan, don't think that you can avoid me just because you are fast. You can avoid me, but you can't avoid me forever. There will be a time when we meet in the arena. My people are not people that you can casually kill. In the core transportation formation of the Endless Sea, when a figure passed through the barrier and entered, a peerless expert emitting a powerful aura immediately stared at the figure that entered and snorted coldly with a vicious expression. The core transportation formation of the Endless Sea was different from the previous 2 ruins. The entire space was only 1,000 feet in radius. Basically, all the cultivators were gathered here, and the information on the token clearly stated that this was the transportation formation to the next level of training. No disciple was allowed to fight here. If there was no such rule, this place would have become a bloody hell by now. Now this core transportation formation was already densely packed with cultivators. Basically, they were all meditating and adjusting their breathing. After hearing the sudden voice, they immediately looked at the person who had just stepped into the ruins with a trace of surprise and shock. Especially Yu Wuqing and the other 4. They even restrained their auras and lowered their heads, only using their eyes to secretly glance at the person who had just arrived. Leng Yihan. At this moment, there was likely not a single disciple that didn't know this name. It was the symbol of terror, the symbol of absolute strength, the symbol of super abnormality. Before the training began, he was only a rank 8 martial emperor. However, in a short period of 3 months, he had brought extreme shock to everyone in the Endless Sea. First, he killed Zhou Xiao, a rank 5 martial ancestor realm cultivator. Then news of him possessing a top-quality 5 elements fusion spirit artifact spread. After that, news of people being killed by him continuously spread. Furthermore, the people he killed were all experts that made the majority of people shrink back. Even an 8th stage martial ancestor realm expert had died under his sword. Is that so? I am looking forward to seeing how you all will die when we meet in the arena. There are still 6 months of training left. I truly don't know if you all will be able to live past 6 months. Lung Yihan was still in the air. He hadn't even landed yet, but his sharp eyes were already looking at the person who had spoken. His arrogant, disdainful, and cold voice was just like his name. Especially those soul-stirring eyes that exuded a strong murderous aura. It was terrifying to look at. However, Yu Wuqing and the others who were originally secretly glancing at Lung Yihan widened their eyes in shock. This is Lung Yihan? The 5 of them were stupefied, stunned. The aura of the person before them was undoubtedly terrifying and powerful. His appearance was also handsome. However, compared to the Lung Yihan they knew, he was clearly more feminine and less masculine. They were 2 completely different people. Other than sneak attacks, secretly injuring others and escaping, what else do you know? If you have the guts, fight me head on. The guy with the powerful aura spoke again. Gao Jianfei, if you have the guts, fight me head-on? Do you really think that our Sky Tyrant Empire's ranking as number 1 is just a bluff? Just at this moment, a vigorous voice suddenly sounded from another direction. A tall and mighty figure slowly stood up. In an instant, all the disciples in this space felt as if a mountain suddenly pressed down on their hearts. It was incomparably heavy. Humph. On the arena, I, Gao Jianfei, will fight you. What bullshit ranking number 1? That's the Empire, not you. Of course, you're only temporarily number 1 on the Pagoda Monument. After the arena battle, let's see if you can still be so arrogant. The person called Gao Jianfei, who was the first to speak, said arrogantly. Crash. Following the conversation between the two, the cultivators in the transfer point area were suddenly shocked. Originally, they did not recognize them and only felt the strength of the two. However, at this moment, they knew who they were. Gao Jianfei, the top expert ranked number 2 on the Black Pagoda Monument. And the tall and mighty figure who had just stood up was the existence standing at the top of the Black Pagoda Monument. Meng Yi, 9th grade martial grandmaster. Senior Meng Yi, I'll settle my own matter. What surprised everyone was that Lung Yihan actually looked at Meng Yi, who had stepped forward to help. His expression was still cold and indifferent as he said indifferently. After he finished speaking, his sword-like eyes looked again at Gao Jianfei. Then he swept his gaze around and said coldly, if you want to obtain my supreme grade combination spiritual weapon, if you're not afraid of death, then come. Don't worry, I Lung Yihan have always been alone. The people of the Sky Tyrant Empire will not interfere. 2 consecutive days of 4 updates. Friends who still have monthly votes, please vote for Wuxian. Thank you to Brother Tariff for your 20,000 coins and monthly votes. Thank you to all the brothers and sisters who have donated and voted for me. Thank you. Chapter 169. He's Lung Yihan. Fuck. Who's that brat? At this moment, Yu Wuqing and the others had the urge to vomit blood. As long as one wasn't an idiot, one could be sure that the arrogant, cold, and powerful young man in front of them was the real Lung Yihan. During this period of time, the 5 of them had been on tenterhooks all the time. Especially after learning that Lung Yihan had killed several powerful existences. Once there was any news of Lung Yihan's appearance, they would scurry away like rats, fearing that they would encounter him. But now they suddenly realized that they had been wrong from the beginning. What was even more ridiculous was that Lung Yihan was clearly the scapegoat, but he had never explained himself. Furthermore, it seemed that he really did have a supreme grade 5 elements combination spiritual weapon. Could it be the other one we guessed? Chen Hao? One of them transmitted his voice to the other 4. Xuanwu Empire's Chen Hao? That's right. Isn't that little beauty from Xuanwu Empire? Another person transmitted his voice. It must be him. No wonder Tantai Lian stopped when she saw that brat, and didn't chase after us. Chen Hao, Xuanwu Empire's Chen Hao. Senior brother Yu, what do we do now? That brat hasn't appeared yet, and neither has Tantai Lian. Furthermore, although that brat isn't as terrifying as Lung Yihan, he's still very difficult to deal with. One of them said again. Hearing this person's words, Yu Wuqing and the others frowned. Especially when they thought of Chen Hao's silent attack, they felt a chill run down their spines. This time he must die. Yu Wuqing's eyes flashed with a sinister aura as he transmitted his voice coldly. After saying that, he began to size up the cultivators in the space. After a while, after locking onto his first target, he quietly walked over. Rumble rumble. In the distance, Chen Hao, who was advancing at high speed, sensed the violent energy fluctuations in front of him. It was obvious that a cultivator was fighting a monstrous beast. From the aura of the monstrous beast, it should be a rank 7 martial ancestor realm monstrous beast. It posed no threat to Chen Hao. However, the cultivator who was fighting seemed to have a very weak cultivation. It was obvious that he was being chased by the monstrous beast. The turbulent undercurrents and turbid seawater made it impossible for Chen Hao to see the battle. However, Chen Hao wasn't interested in watching and went straight to the side. Life and death had nothing to do with him. Just as Chen Hao was about to make a detour, A shrill and angry scream rang out. Clearly, the cultivator who was fleeing and fighting at the same time had encountered an extremely dangerous situation. Just by listening to this scream, one could tell that he was about to die in the hands of this monster. When Chen Hao heard the voice, he frowned and froze. It's her. After a slight hesitation, Chen Hao shook his head. His figure flashed and he rushed over as fast as lightning. In a moment, Tantai Lian's figure appeared in front of Chen Hao. What made Chen Hao frown was that Tantai Lian was covered in blood. There were dozens of wounds of various sizes on her body, especially the wound above her heart, which was fatal. The flesh and blood that were turned up was shocking. What made Chen Hao even more shocked was that almost half of Tantai Lian's breasts were exposed. As she crazily blocked the attacks of the monstrous beast, they were violently bumping, swaying, and trembling in the water. Her clothes were also torn and tattered. Every wound on her body revealed her naked body. Her snow-white beautiful legs were completely exposed. Her long gown and underwear seemed to have been torn from her thigh to the bottom by the claws of the monstrous beast. Is this monstrous beast the legendary Lei Feng? Chen Hao blinked his eyes. Even though his mind was firm, he still had a headache at this moment. Not daring to think too much, with a sound, Chen Hao inserted himself between Tantai Lian and the demonic beasts as fast as lightning, and struck out with his palm, meeting the demonic beast's huge tail that was sweeping towards him. At the same time, 9 flying daggers flashed strangely. Bang! Puff, puff, puff. The powerful and terrifying palm force directly shook the huge body of the monstrous beast, and made it roll back. The 9 flying daggers were like cutting machines. They crisscrossed and continuously went back and forth through the monstrous beast's body. After several slashes, the monstrous beast was cut into pieces. In the blink of an eye, it was completely dead. Change your clothes and I'll take you away. It's almost time for the transmission point. It's too late. Without looking back, Chen Hao said with his back facing Tantai Lian, who was in a daze and had almost exhausted all her energy. Hearing Chen Hao's words, Tantai Lian woke up from the shock. At this moment, she, who had completely relied on her willpower to support herself and forget about pain, suddenly felt extremely weak and painful. Her head was dizzy, and she almost fainted. Especially the 5-inch hole in her chest that was pierced by the monstrous beast's fangs. It was even more terrible. On the verge of life and death, Tantai Lian had no time to be shy and answered with difficulty. She clenched her silver teeth and endured the piercing pain and weakness. After taking off her tattered clothes, she took out the clothes from the storage ring. It was extremely difficult, but she quickly put them on. The moment she put them on, she relaxed and directly fainted. Fortunately, Chen Hao's figure flashed and he held the unconscious Tantai Lian. He said 2 words in his heart that contained 2 meanings. First, fortunately, Tantai Lian's willpower was not bad. If she was saved in such a serious situation, normal people would be relieved instantly. In such a situation, she would have fainted immediately. However, although Tantai Lian was relieved, she still relied on her willpower to support herself and put on her clothes before fainting. At least, it meant that exposing her body in front of a man was no different from killing her. Second, fortunately, she held on. Otherwise, the hot-blooded Chen Hao would still be tempted by a naked woman, even though she was seriously injured, and it would affect his state of mind. Of course, the most important reason was that Tantai Lian, Yang Fan, and the others could be considered as his companions. Although there was no friendship between them, they were from the same empire after all. Otherwise, although the current Chen Hao was no longer any of the people he used to be, he wouldn't mind. In his opinion, a man should follow his heart and follow his nature. When it was time to vent their needs in certain aspects, they naturally had to do so. After taking out a resurrection fruit and stuffing it into Tantai Lian's mouth, Chen Hao directly used his energy to shatter it and approached Tantai Lian's dantian. His figure flashed, and he quickly carried Tantai Lian to the core teleportation area of the Endless Sea. Why aren't Xiao Lian and Chen Hao here yet? Could something have happened to them? In the core teleportation area, Yang Fan, and I Jianpain, and Li Yifeng had gathered together. Li Yifeng glanced at the 2 of them and frowned slightly. At this moment, their auras had obviously improved tremendously. Chen Hao shouldn't be in trouble. He comprehended the essence of the wind element, so it's definitely enough to protect himself. However, it's hard to say about Tantai Lien. Why are you worried? Yang Fan said calmly. Nonsense. Of course I'm worried. In the first area of the historical remnant, when I came out, she was gone. I really don't know if she's in danger. If I don't see her here, I'm afraid. I was wrong. I shouldn't have entered the historical remnant. Damn it. Li Yifeng said regretfully. His words caused Yang Fan and Enai Jianpain to roll their eyes. He actually regretted entering a historical remnant that others yearned for because of a woman. To the two of them, this was completely inconceivable and incomprehensible. Yang Fan shook his head and said, "There's still 2 more hours. I hope she can come back." Every few minutes, there would be a fluctuation in the space. However, to the disappointment of the 3 of them, it was not someone they did not know. At the same time, a few small teams had appeared around Yu Wuqing and the other 4. The strength of each small team was similar to Yu Wuqing and the other 4, and they seemed to be secretly discussing something. As long as there was a fluctuation, these 20 or so people would stare at the person who entered at the same time. Every time they saw Yu Wuqing and the others shaking their heads slightly, the others would withdraw their gazes. Hiss. In less than an hour, when the teleportation formation was about to open, there was another fluctuation in the space. Chen Hao. Little Lien? Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Enai Jianpain immediately stood up and quickly walked toward Chen Hao and Tantai Lien, who had just stepped into the core area. At this moment, Tantai Lien had recovered her cultivation under the powerful medicinal effect of the resurrection fruit. However, the injuries on her body were not something that could be healed in a short period of time. It's him. We should have known that he's Chen Hao. Tantai Lien is obviously training with him. It's him? This kind of aura is too weak. It's just the wind element true essence. If I can kill him, I'll give you some benefits. Of course, the prerequisite is that he really has the spirit weapon you mentioned. One of the young men said casually with a smile on his face. Don't worry. If he didn't comprehend the wind element true essence, how could we possibly reveal such important information to you? The reward doesn't matter. As long as we can kill him and stop him from following us like a ghost. Why are you only back now? Little Lien, where did you go? It took me so long to find you. Why are you with Chen Hao? After the 3 of them came to Chen Hao and Tantai Lien's side, Li Yifeng immediately bombarded them with questions. The handsome and spirited Li Yifeng stared at Tantai Lien with great concern. We met by chance, Chen Hao said with a smile. He didn't mention Tantai Lien's injuries. Tantai Lien blushed slightly and avoided Li Yifeng's gaze. I'll heal first. Injured? Are your injuries serious? Li Yifeng asked in surprise. However, Tantai Lien didn't say anything else. She sat cross-legged and forcefully suppressed the strange feeling in her heart. She circulated her energy and slowly nourished the wounds on her body. She blushed not because of Li Yifeng's concern, but because she was ashamed of her original thoughts. More or less, she had used her beauty to make Li Yifeng, who had no resistance against women, take good care of her. However, at this moment, she had been enlightened by Chen Hao, especially after being saved by Chen Hao and seeing her in such a sorry state. Her emotions were very complicated. She was a little resistant to Li Yifeng's enthusiasm. Chapter 170. Second update. Now 34 monthly votes. 6 more to go. Dark Mountain will have 4 updates today. Dark Mountain will continue to fight. If you can reach 60, Dark Mountain will have 5 updates. We will complete it without sleep or rest. Come on. Why are you so late? Just as Chen Hao also sat down cross-legged, a condensed voice lightly floated into his ears. I killed a few more monsters. We're waiting here anyway. Chen Hao was slightly taken aback. He glanced at Lung Yihan, who had a cold expression on his face, and was completely isolated from the rest of the group. Chen Hao sent a voice transmission to him. I'm afraid I can't completely take the blame for you. Those who want to kill with a borrowed knife should know that you're not me. So be careful. It's okay. This is better. Chen Hao's lips curled up slightly as he replied without changing his expression. The moment he entered, he saw Yu Wuqing and the others. Just from their eyes, he could tell that they knew the truth. Although Chen Hao did not see them, he was sure that Leng Yihan had exposed his identity here. Moreover, not far from Yu Wuqing, there was a girl who was staring at him with bright eyes. She was obviously an interested girl. Did she secretly do something to him? If Chen Hao only had a 9th-grade spirit martial dual body, he probably would not have been able to sense the girl's subtle movements. However, Chen Hao's powerful merged soul perception clearly captured it. It was definitely the middle-grade spirit martial sect girl, who left an imperceptible restriction on his body. Less than an hour after Chen Hao and Tantai Lian arrived at the core teleportation area, the space above them suddenly began to fluctuate. Waves of mysterious aura were emitted. Immediately, a huge pillar of light about 100 feet in diameter poured down and appeared in the core teleportation area. Go. Whoosh. Whoosh. Instantly, countless figures, some alone and some in groups, flew into the pillar of light. The moment they entered, they disappeared from everyone's sight. Tantai Lian hurriedly stood up. Her clear eyes looked at Chen Hao at first glance. However, when she saw that Chen Hao was cold and indifferent, and he didn't even look at her, she bit her lips slightly as a wisp of determination flashed through her eyes. Let's go together. However, contrary to Tantai Lian, Li Yifeng, Yang Fan, and Ni Jianpei's expectations, the cold and calm Chen Hao frowned slightly and looked at the four of them. He directly said, "Because of me, you will be implicated. So let's go together." "What do you mean?" Li Yifeng, Yang Fan, and Ni Jianpei asked. But Tantai Lian only looked at Chen Hao. "I'll explain after we go." They were very strong. There were quite a few 6th rank and 7th rank martial grandmasters. "And you guys for now. Go." "Let's go." Chen Hao ignored the four people's shock and said straightforwardly. Tantai Lian only hesitated slightly. Then she took the lead and walked to Chen Hao's side. She directly grabbed Chen Hao's arm. This made Li Yifeng, who originally wanted to pull Tantai Lian, slightly stunned. Especially when Tantai Lian grabbed it with both hands. Anyone could see that she did not want to be pulled by others. After being stunned for a moment, Li Yifeng smiled and reached out to shake hands with Yang Fan and Ni Jianpei. Yang Fan smiled at Chen Hao and held Chen Hao's hand. Whoosh. The five of them instantly flashed into the transportation light pillar. Go. Follow. As soon as Chen Hao's group of 5 entered the transportation light pillar, Yu Wuqing and the other small teams with ulterior motives rushed toward the transportation light pillar with their fastest speed. After a moment, the entire transportation area was empty. With a rumble, it collapsed. The turbulent seawater spread over. The trial in the endless sea had finally ended. The Xinwu relic. 10,000 years ago, the ruins of the Xinwu Empire. In historical records, it was the only super empire that could unify nearly 1,000 dynasties in the eastern continent. It was also a super existence that could compete with the sects of the cultivation world purely by relying on the power of the empire. 10,000 years later, the Xinwu Empire had become an ancient relic. It was also the last stop of the 6-month trial for the disciples of the 100 Empire ranking. The Xinwu relic stretched for tens of millions of miles. It was vast and boundless. It would open once every 2 years. Ever since the sects of the cultivation world discovered it, in the past 100 years, almost every disciple who entered for the trial would have a good harvest. Moreover, the disciples who participated in the trial were all different. It was like a region that opened once every 2 years. Moreover, this time not only were the disciples of the 100 Empire ranking qualified to enter, but also the low-level outer sect disciples of the dozens of sects that organized the 100 Empire ranking. The condition to enter the Xinwu relic was that one had to be below the martial ancestor realm. In other words, only disciples in the acquired realm were qualified to enter. Martial sages, martial gods, and other Khanate realm disciples would be excluded even if they stood in the transportation formation. No matter how talented they were not qualified. The moment Chen Hao and the others stepped into the transportation formation, the golden names on the black pagoda monument flickered and changed again. Dongfang Ting's eyes widened as she stared at the black pagoda monument. After the light disappeared, she was worried about Chen Hao's life and death. She did not even bother to look at the names at the top. She started from the 30th place and quickly searched for Chen Hao's name. The more she looked, the more nervous she became. She saw Yang Fan and I Jianping and Li Yifeng. After Li Yifeng, she quickly found Tantai Lian, who had risen a few ranks. However, she still did not see Chen Hao's name. Dead. Chen Hao actually died in there. Dongfang Ting's expression was extremely regretful as she said sluggishly. Although she had not interacted much with Chen Hao and had only helped him train in the Cloud Mountain Range for 3 months, she was very fond of Chen Hao's talent, comprehension, temperament and character. In particular, her nephew Dongfang Jun was on good terms with Chen Hao. Therefore, she naturally doted on him. Since they were both from the Jinyuan kingdom, she naturally hoped that Chen Hao would be as strong as possible. But now, this Chen Hao is indeed powerful. He actually rose to the 15th place. Just as Dongfang Ting was feeling disappointed and upset, the old man beside her suddenly said to her, "What?" Dongfang Ting asked in shock. Then she looked directly at the top of the Black Pagoda monument. Chen Hao. The 2 golden words were astonishingly ranked at the 15th place, shining brightly. How could this be? How could this be? In the short 10,000 miles sea region, in only 3 days' time, Chen Hao was most definitely not locked onto by the mirror image below him, because he had followed a large number of cultivators into the teleportation zone. How could his ranking not only not increase, but increase by so much? Did he kill experts? That seemed to be the only possibility. Otherwise, Dongfang Ting was unable to imagine how many monstrous beasts Chen Hao could have killed in a short 3 days' time. How many monstrous beasts could he have killed in order to increase his ranking? One must know that the higher one's ranking was, the more difficult it would be to increase one's ranking. Yet, Chen Hao had actually increased his ranking to the 15th place. There was only a difference of 5 places. Chen Hao, who had only started training as a rank 8 martial emperor, was already qualified to become a seated contestant. Hiss. In the distorted space, Chen Hao and the others appeared in an unfamiliar world at the same time. Feeling the ancient era's aura assaulting his face, and staring at the vast and boundless remnant space, information about the divine martial remnant appeared in Chen Hao's mind. The divine martial remnant contained countless opportunities, mechanisms, formations, restrictions, and barriers. They were everywhere. Countless treasures and cultivation techniques of the divine martial empire that ruled the entire eastern continent 10,000 years ago were left behind. Furthermore, the information from the title plate allowed Chen Hao to understand that the sect's low-level Hotian realm disciples would also enter the divine martial remnant. This meant that in this place, his competitors were not only the disciples on the 100 Empire ranking. Divine martial remnant. Chen Hao's black eyes revealed an incomparably sharp battle intent as he said softly. His aura also involuntarily began to spread out. This caused Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Enai Jianping, who were beside him, to open their eyes wide in shock. Only Tantai Lian was relatively calm. After all, Tantai Lian knew that the monstrous beast that had nearly taken her life was easily dealt with by Chen Hao in less than a second. Furthermore, when she returned to the core teleportation area and woke up, she witnessed Chen Hao's strength with her own eyes. Then she thought about how Yu Wuqing and the others had seen Chen Hao flee like a rat with his head in his hands. Although she didn't know why, in her eyes, Chen Hao was so powerful that he surpassed her by far. Chen Hao, what did you mean when you said that you might implicate us? After a brief moment of shock, Li Yifeng took the lead to ask. I killed Zhou Xiao of the Xiongfeng Empire. Chen Hao said calmly. What? His words caused the 4 people's expressions to change drastically. Yu Wuqing and the other 4 from the Crystal Jade Empire, who saw me kill Zhou Xiao, wanted to snatch my spiritual weapon. Unfortunately, they did not have the ability to do so. Therefore, there was a rumor that Lung Yihan had a supreme grade 5 elements combination spiritual weapon. They wanted to kill with a borrowed knife, but they mistook me for Lung Yihan. Now they should know that I am not Lung Yihan. Chen Hao said calmly. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and I Jianping, and Tantai Lian were all shocked to the extreme. When they heard about the 5 elements combination spiritual weapon, they thought of Chen Hao. However, Chen Hao's spiritual weapon was clearly not a supreme-grade spiritual weapon, so they did not think much of it. But now, Leng Yihan. When he was in the teleportation area, he quarreled with Gao Jianfei, the second-ranked expert. So Yu Wuqing and the others must know that they made a mistake. But it is very strange. Why didn't Leng Yihan expose them? Just now he arrogantly told all the cultivators in the space that if they wanted his supreme grade 5 elements combination spiritual weapon, they could go ahead and snatch it. Yang Fan was the first to frown and say, Leng Yihan is very strong. He did not expose it because he is confident that no one can snatch anything from him. Instead, they will become his training targets. Chen Hao said, Let's go. You should all have a spiritual imprint left on your bodies by a purposeful expert. Let's find a place first and see if I can break it. If you can, the 4 of you can cultivate together or separately. Relatively speaking, it is safer. I can also do whatever I want. Begging for monthly votes. Chapter 171. 1 vote short. Today Wushan will have 4 chapters. 21 votes short. Today, Wushan will have 5 chapters. Can you make Wushan 5 chapters? Wushan is ready. 1 bottle of essential balm, 1 pot of strong tea, several packs of cigarettes. No sleep, no rest, fight to the end. Brothers and sisters, if you dare to come, I dare to increase. Come. Monthly votes. Hearing Chen Hao's words, the 4 of them had complicated expressions. This trouble was indeed not something they could resist. If they were really left with a spiritual imprint, then how could they resist against rare geniuses of 5th, 6th, or even 7th grade martial ancestors? Even Yang Fan, who had comprehended some of the true essence of the wind attribute, would find it difficult to survive, let alone Li Yifeng, Enai Jianpain, and Tantai Lian. However, at this moment, they could not blame Chen Hao. They could only blame themselves for coming from the same empire. Chen Hao could ignore them and leave alone, but Chen Hao did not do so. At this moment, they could only rely on Chen Hao, who they felt was unfathomable. Clouds and mist lingered, and an ancient aura filled the air. Accompanied by the occasional roar of demonic beasts, the 5 of them flew towards the core of the ruins. Chen Hao was not sure how far the spiritual imprint could reach. With the 4 of them by his side, if those people rushed over, he would be fine, but Tantai Lian and the others would be in danger. When the teleportation light pillars teleported cultivators, they would be separated by a certain distance and teleported to the periphery of the ruins. If they were lucky, they would not find them for 10 days to half a month. If they were unlucky, they might arrive in a few hours. Therefore, the best method now was to find a place with restrictions, enter it, and use the protection of the restrictions to buy some time to erase the spiritual imprints on the 4 of them. Whoosh! 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 More than 10 minutes later, an ancient city with a radius of 100 miles appeared in the eyes of Chen Hao and the others. Just by looking at the scale of the city, it was definitely the ruins of a provincial capital. However, according to the information in his mind, this city was probably just a small county in the Xinwu Empire 10,000 years ago. Let's do it here. Chen Hao said in a deep voice after sensing the dense qi above the city. Just as he finished speaking, he frowned and said, Someone is coming. Hearing Chen Hao's words, the 4 of them were slightly stunned. Their gazes quickly swept through the surroundings, but they did not sense any aura. Don't worry about it. It's just a 3rd stage martial great master, 2 second stage and 2 first stage cultivators. Are you from the Clear Stream Empire? Chen Hao asked again after a while. However, after he finished speaking, Chen Hao frowned when he saw the faces of the 5 figures. At this moment, Yang Fan and the other 3 also saw the newcomer's face. Aren't they from Xuanwu Empire? Nice to meet you. Ha ha ha. A hearty laugh suddenly came from the mouth of a handsome young man in the lead. His face was full of smiles and his eyes shone with a trace of excitement. The Qinglu Empire was one of the empires that bordered the Xuanwu Empire. The 2 empires were always at odds with each other. Under normal circumstances, as long as the empires bordered each other, they would not be able to coexist peacefully. Even if they did coexist peacefully, it was because of the pressure from the other empires that they temporarily formed a united front. Once the threat was eliminated, disputes over territory and benefits would appear. It was clear that Chen Hao and the others had obtained the detailed information of these people from Mu Qing. Similarly, the other party also had the detailed information of Chen Hao and the others. However, they did not expect to coincidentally meet them just as they entered the remnant. A second-stage martial great master, 2 first-stage martial great masters, a little beauty with the cultivation of a 9th-stage martial emperor, and a rank 8 martial emperor. TSK, your Xuanwu Empire is truly getting worse with each passing year. I truly did not expect you to still be alive with this kind of strength. Very good, very good. It seems that you left them especially for us. Haha. Little beauty, let me deal with them. Just at this moment, a young man with the cultivation of a first-stage martial great master said as he stared at Tantai Lien with a trace of lust in his eyes. Idiot. Chen Hao said with a calm expression. As he spoke, his body immediately disappeared. 3 seconds. In merely 3 seconds, Yang Fan and the others who were prepared for a great battle were dumbstruck as they looked at the tragic scene before them. 3 seconds ago, the 5 geniuses who were incomparably arrogant and complacent were now like tofu. They did not even have the chance to resist before being dismembered. Let's go. After Chen Hao threw the 5 storage rings into his Xianhuang ring, he had an indifferent expression. It was as if he had not done anything at all. His body moved, and he took the lead to fly toward the city below. As Yang Fan and the others looked at Chen Hao's figure, the shock in their hearts was unimaginable. They simply could not understand how Chen Hao had accomplished this. Those 5 geniuses, especially those rank 3 martial emperors, were definitely not people that they could contend against. Likely, only Yang Fan, who had comprehended half of the true essence of the wind attribute, would be able to barely fight against them. The outcome of the battle was still unknown. However, Chen Hao had killed 5 people in an instant as if he were killing chickens. Countless large and small cities stood in great numbers within the 10,000 miles radius of the remnant. They were no longer as glorious as they were 10,000 years ago. There were no signs of human habitation, only countless monstrous beasts roaming about. It was a desolate and frightening place filled with a bleak and ancient aura. At the moment when Chen Hao and the others entered the ancient city, several thousand miles away, at the edge of the remnant, a total of 24 figures were gathered together. They were staring at a young woman standing in the middle of the group. Although this young woman was not exceptionally beautiful, her figure was extremely alluring. Her full breasts were clearly 2 sizes larger than those of ordinary women. Her waist was slender, her buttocks were perky, and her legs were long and slender. She appeared extremely enchanting. However, there were no origin energy fluctuations around her. Only the space between her eyebrows was flickering with colorless and formless energy fluctuations. Among the 23 people beside her, there were 4 young women. The 4 young women were still fine. However, at least half of the male disciples' gazes were focused on the young woman's towering breasts. Fan Yin, how is it? After 2 minutes, when Yu Wuqing sensed that the young woman's spirit fluctuations had disappeared, he asked Fan Yin. They're lucky. For the time being, they're not within my detection range. Let's search along the edge of the remnant. The detection range of my tracing seal is within 500 miles. As long as they don't run all the way, I believe it won't take long to find them. Let's go. The enchanting young woman called Fan Yin said confidently. Will they discover that you left a tracing seal? One of the young men, a grade 7 martial ancestor realm, frowned and said, if they discover it, they can escape from the remnant. If we search at the edge, I'm afraid we won't find anything. Impossible. Unless they have an expert of grade 7 martial ancestor realm, or above beside them. Even a grade 9 martial ancestor would not be able to discover them. If you don't trust me, you can try it on yourself. Fan Yin raised her eyebrows slightly and said with a trace of arrogance. That won't be necessary. Since that's the case, let's go. Okay. Let's go. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A total of 24 people instantly turned into streaks of flowing light and started to fly along the periphery of the remnant. They would stop for a moment every few hundred miles. If they did not find anything, they would continue forward. The sky was overcast. The sun, moon, and stars could not be seen. Chen Hao and the other 4 people directly landed in front of a huge palace in the center of the city. The dense and mysterious restriction formation shrouded the entire palace. After 10,000 years, it still emitted an extremely powerful aura. Not bad. If we rely on brute force, I'm afraid it won't be that easy to enter. If this restriction formation has the ability to block spiritual imprints, it would naturally be better. Chen Hao's mind slowly merged with the myriad of things in the world. He sensed the restriction formation in the city and said, "Don't use brute force to break the restriction formation. Just follow me." Okay. At this moment, the 4 people could no longer imagine where Chen Hao's ability came from. However, they were already convinced in their hearts. They all nodded and replied. Chen Hao took the lead and brought the 4 people to the huge city gate. At the same time, the space between his eyebrows and his palm emitted a majestic energy fluctuation. Especially the energy fluctuation between his eyebrows. It once again made Tantai Lian and the other 3 people dumbfounded. Tantai Lian especially did not expect Chen Hao's mental energy to be so majestic. It was no longer a secret that Chen Hao was a dual cultivator of martial arts and mental energy. After all, Chen Hao was their opponent in the arena back then. However, what they understood was that Chen Hao had given up on martial arts. Moreover, from the beginning to the end, he had not shown how strong his mental energy cultivation was. The only thing he had shown was that he had extraordinary control over his origin energy. This was naturally related to his mental energy that was stronger than ordinary martial artists. However, at this moment, Tantai Lian realized that the mental energy fluctuation between Chen Hao's eyebrows was several times stronger than hers. 1 minute. Between the 2 of them, a total of 5 minutes had passed. Rumble. The tall and sturdy city gate actually emitted a strange fluctuation, and rumbled open on its own. Quick! Chen Hao pulled Tantai Lian and led the way in. After Yang Fan and the other 2 people entered, the city gate closed again. What surprised Chen Hao and the other 4 was that when the restriction was restored, the entire space was plunged into complete darkness. It was so dark that one could not see one's own fingers, but it was filled with majestic and vigorous energy. Every breath of this energy made Chen Hao feel hot all over. It was the same for Yang Fan, Li Yifeng and Anai Jianpain. However, Tantai Lian's mental energy was shaken. As the surging heat flowed into her dantian, she actually felt a strange feeling. It was as if her soul had started to tremble at this moment, and was being baptized by the heat flow. Her 6 senses became extremely clear, and her perception was magically strengthened by several times. Phew! Pure yang! At this moment, the probing sword spirit's exclamation sounded in Chen Hao's mind, following which, this fellow withdrew all of its aura and instantly disappeared from Chen Hao's senses. Pure yang! Chen Hao thought to himself. So comfortable. Tantai Lian could not help but say softly. Comfortable? It's so suffocating. And you still say it's comfortable? Yin and yang blend. This ancient city is filled with pure yang energy. She has a purine body, so of course it's comfortable. Alright, let's continue going deeper. If we can break the mental imprint on your body, it's not bad for you to cultivate here. However, the prerequisite is that no one comes to destroy the restriction. Otherwise, this pure yang energy will probably disappear. Chen Hao said calmly. The heat in his body instantly disappeared when he activated the 9 revolving heavenly sun technique. Third update. Dark Mountain continues to fight. Requesting monthly votes. Recommendation votes. Many thanks to Tariff for once again tipping me with 10,000 coins and monthly votes. Congratulations on being promoted to Sect Leader Aotion. Thank you. At the same time, thank you to all the brothers and sisters who voted. There are still 21 votes to go. Requesting monthly votes. Requesting 5th update. Chapter 172. 4th update. For more votes, and it's the 5th update. 24 votes, and it's the 6th update. 2 more hours to midnight. How much can we get? Dark Mountain is ready for a sleepless battle. Come on. Begging for monthly votes. Begging for an outburst. Inside the huge palace, Chen Hao relied on his near-death experience in Xianhuang Ancient City to gain a deep understanding of mechanisms and formations. Coupled with his freakish research ability, he was able to draw inferences about other things from one instance and master them through a comprehensive study of them. What's more, this palace was a legacy left behind by cultivators of the Hotian realm. No matter how profound and powerful the restrictions were, they were ultimately limited. Therefore, although it was difficult, Chen Hao still managed to overcome all obstacles. In the pitch-black space, he led Tantai Lian and the other three through one formation after another. After a full 4 hours, they finally stepped in front of the last door at the core of the palace. None of the restrictions were broken by brute force. The aura of the entire ruins was perfectly preserved. Moreover, as the 5 of them went deeper, the pure yang energy in the air became more and more vigorous. Tantai Lian's beautiful little face became more and more spirited and excited. However, even though Chen Hao had successfully cultivated the 9 revolving heavenly sun technique, he was unable to completely drive away the heat in his heart. As for Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Enai Jianpain, they were even more unbearable. They had already begun to circulate their yuan qi. As they advanced, they painfully tempered the pure yang energy that entered their bodies. Although it was painful, the 3 of them were very excited. This was because they knew very well what kind of amazing results would be if they cultivated in this environment. 9981. We've already passed 80. This should be the last one. If I'm not wrong, there must be something pure yang in this ruin, Chen Hao said softly as he sensed the restrictions in front of him. Chen Hao, how do you know everything? It's said that these formations and restrictions can only be broken by those in the Hotian realm. And you? Li Yifeng said after hearing Chen Hao's words. He endured the heat in his body. I have comprehended how to operate the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth. All I lack is energy. Naturally, I can break the array. As Chen Hao spoke, he reached out and pressed the door in front of him. The last restriction was undoubtedly the most powerful one. Chen Hao didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. His mind was completely immersed in the profound restriction, comprehending its mysteries bit by bit. Time passed by minute. After a quarter of an hour, when there were still no signs of breaking, Li Yifeng, Enai Jianpain, and Yang Fan could no longer hold on. They all sat down cross-legged and began to refine the pure yang energy that was madly pouring in. Only Tantai Lian was in high spirits as she stared at the focused Chen Hao. An hour passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Chen Hao was drenched in sweat. Under the light of the energy, one could clearly see red smoke billowing from the top of Chen Hao's head. His entire body was like a furnace, emitting a majestic heat and a strong masculine scent. At the beginning, Tantai Lian didn't feel anything. But as time passed, Tantai Lian, who was standing beside Chen Hao, began to blush. For some reason she, who was in high spirits, gradually felt that Chen Hao was infinitely attractive to her. That feeling was like the attraction of yin and yang. It made her want to throw herself into Chen Hao's arms and hug him tightly. Chen Hao, who was immersed in breaking the array, didn't feel anything. But Tantai Lian couldn't help but get closer and closer. Her clear eyes gradually revealed a kind of heat. Break. Seeing that Tantai Lian was getting closer and closer to Chen Hao suddenly let out a clear shout. In an instant, energy surged out from his body. Rumble. The thick and solid metal door slowly opened. At this moment, streaks of fiery red light scattered out, instantly illuminating the palace outside the door. It was like a red sea, and the dense pure yang energy could be seen violently fluctuating with the naked eye. Ah! Almost at the same time, Tantai Lian suddenly woke up. She screamed and instantly took a few steps back. Her little face turned red. What are you doing? Chen Hao looked at Tantai Lian, who had a strange expression, and said in surprise. No. Nothing. Tantai Lian hurriedly avoided Chen Hao's gaze and said. It's open? At this moment, Yang Fan and the other 2 also opened their eyes and said with a trace of surprise. And let's go in. After Chen Hao finished speaking, he took the lead and stepped through the door. Tantai Lian and the other 3 hurriedly followed him in. Following which, the door closed with a rumble. Phew! What a dense pure yang energy. Chen Hao, the treasures here are yours. We can just cultivate. I can't help it, Li Yifeng said with a pained and excited expression. After saying that, his figure flashed and like lightning, he appeared in a corner of the huge space and sat down cross-legged to cultivate. Yang Fan and Enai Jianpain did the same. You should cultivate too. Chen Hao glanced at Tantai Lian and said. Oh. After Tantai Lian responded, she also sat down cross-legged, regained her refreshed appearance, and entered a state of cultivation. Unlike Li Yifeng and the other two, when the pure yang energy entered Tantai Lian's body, it was not absorbed by her. It only circulated in her body once, making Tantai Lian feel extremely comfortable. It was as if her soul had been baptized time and time again. However, the strange feeling she had towards Chen Hao just now also became stronger and stronger. This made Tantai Lian feel a trace of uneasiness in her heart. Especially just now, if it wasn't for Chen Hao's loud shout and suddenly breaking the restriction, she was afraid. Why am I like this? Could it be the influence of this pure yang energy? Tantai Lian thought to herself. Such emotions should never appear in her. She was very sure that, at least for now, she did not have any fantasies about the matters between men and women. This was the golden age for cultivation. How could she waste it on whispering sweet nothings in front of flowers under the moonlight? Unable to understand, Tantai Lian hurriedly focused her mind. Her eyes focused on her nose, and her nose focused on her heart. Soon she was immersed in cultivation. She inhaled and exhaled the pure yang energy in the air, to see if she could absorb some. What she did not expect was that when she started cultivating, as the pure yang energy she inhaled and exhaled increased, her soul began to tremble. An unprecedented state of clarity became stronger and stronger. This feeling even made Tantai Lian think that she had always been in a muddle-headed state. Gradually, as her soul became clearer and clearer, a sliver of enlightenment appeared in Tantai Lian's mind, as if the clouds had been pushed aside to reveal the sun and moon. Hiss. Oh. Chen Hao, who was also immersed in capturing the spiritual brand on his body, suddenly opened his eyes in surprise and looked in Tantai Lian's direction. At the same time, Li Yifeng, Yang Fan and Enai Jianpain also opened their eyes in shock. In the huge space, with Tantai Lian as the core, the pure yang energy in the air surged into her body. However, it did not seem to stop. It went in from the top of her head and emitted from the pores all over her body, causing her clothes to swell up. At the same time, a pure and majestic qi began to shine from between Tantai Lian's eyebrows. Her smooth forehead was like a heart, and there was a thumping sound. Is she about to break through to the intent zone level? The combination of yin and yang seems to be very useful. She is the one who benefits the most, Chen Hao said softly. After saying that, he did not pay any more attention to her, and once again immersed himself in solving the almost imperceptible spiritual brand. Just as Chen Hao was comprehending something, a gust of wind suddenly blew in the entire space. There was an even more terrifying fluctuation, forcing Chen Hao and the other three to open their eyes in surprise. What shocked the four of them was that at this moment, Tantai Lian was actually floating in the air. Her clothes and hair were fluttering, and a pure and majestic spiritual energy filled the entire space like a vast ocean. This kind of aura clearly indicated that she had broken through to the intent zone level. However, this was not what shocked Chen Hao and the other three. What really shocked them was that below Tantai Lian, there was a monster that seemed to be completely condensed from flames. Vermilion Bird. The appearance of this monster was the legendary Vermilion Bird. The pinnacle of the fire attribute, the Vermilion Bird that could burn everything in the world. The raging flames rose and enveloped Tantai Lian. The temperature of the entire space increased by many times. Even Chen Hao was forced to use his protective gang qi to block the rolling heat. However, Tantai Lian was clearly in the core of the flames, but she was safe and sound. Divine Beast Vermilion Bird. Enai Jianpain's expression was shocked, and his voice trembled as he spoke. As the first disciple of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall of the Xuanwu Empire New Show Hall, no one knew better than him what this scene meant. The restrictions of the 5 halls of the Xuanwu Empire New Show Hall were formed by the experts of the cultivation world. If an outsider wanted to forcefully break through the restrictions of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, It would condense into a vermilion bird phantom and turn the person who forcefully broke through the restrictions into ashes. He had seen this with his own eyes. However, at this moment, the aura of the vermilion bird that appeared below Tantai Lien was much stronger than the vermilion bird phantom that appeared last time. Hiss. At this moment, something strange happened again. Tantai Lien's glabella once again shone with a majestic and terrifying spiritual energy. At the same time, a pure and vigorous spiritual energy was released from her glabella and connected with the vermilion bird below her like a tentacle. In an instant, an illusory figure began to condense in front of Tantai Lien. At the same time, Tantai Lien suddenly waved her slender hand in the air. 3 strange flame-like energies seemed to tear through the void and flew toward Li Yifeng, Yangfan, and Enai Jianpain at lightning speed. Ah! The 3 of them let out a scream at the same time. Then with 3 plop sounds, the 3 of them strangely lost consciousness and fell to the ground. A dense aura instantly enveloped the 3 of them. What made Chen Hao widen his eyes was that the 3 of them actually disappeared from this space. Tantai Lien, what are you doing? Chen Hao instantly widened his eyes in shock and shouted at Tantai Lien. Hiss. Chen Hao had just finished speaking when Tantai Lien's closed eyes suddenly opened. In an instant, Chen Hao seemed to see an endless amount of flames. It was as if the stars in the universe were burning and shot into his eyes. The scorching and terrifying temperature instantly caused Chen Hao's body to burn like flames and rise up uncontrollably. 4th update. Thank you, Wuxia Brother Drunken Love, for your great rewards and comments. Thank you. Brothers and sisters who have monthly votes, vote for me. Let Wushan continue to fight. Chapter 173. 5th update, ending at 0 o'clock, should be 65 votes. Complete. Boom. 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 At the same time, endless flames surged into Chen Hao's mind and quickly occupied it. At this moment, Chen Hao's soul power, which was many times stronger than that of ordinary people, was able to maintain a trace of consciousness in the pain of his soul being crushed and minced. However, an extremely terrifying fluctuation was produced from the depths of his mind. It directly connected with the endless sea of flames, causing him to really fall into a coma in an instant, following in the footsteps of Li Yifeng, Yangfan, and Enai Jianpain. However, Chen Hao did not know that unlike Li Yifeng and the other 2, he did not disappear in this space. Instead, he rose up and slowly floated in front of Tantai Lien, directly merging into the shadow that had just formed in front of Tantai Lien. Rumble. The raging flames bloomed and burned wantonly at this moment. Tantai Lien's fiery red eyes, which were like burning stars, connected with Chen Hao's eyes through 2 fiery red light pillars. Below them, the divine beast vermilion bird formed by the flames suddenly opened its mouth. Its mouth was not big, but it emitted a power that could swallow the world. Gee! A loud and strange cry suddenly sounded. Chen Hao and Tantai Lien, as well as the pure yang energy in the entire palace, suddenly surged into the divine beast vermilion bird's mouth along with its cry. Huff! 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 After their bodies entered the vermilion bird's body, they were instantly engulfed by the raging flames. Their clothes finally turned into ashes at this moment. Tantai Lien's graceful and delicate body was clearly presented in front of Chen Hao at this moment. The fiery red light pillars emitted from Tantai Lien's eyes seemed to fluctuate violently a few times, but after a moment, they calmed down again. Unfortunately for a man, Chen Hao, who had lost consciousness, could not appreciate such a seductive scene. After a short moment, their naked bodies were engulfed by the raging flames. Under the guidance of a mysterious energy, both of them automatically crossed their legs. Their palms were connected, and their eyes were still connected by light pillars. They had entered an extremely mysterious state. The vermilion bird's body formed by the flames became smaller and smaller, and the flames that enveloped Chen Hao and Tantai Lien's bodies turned from red to white, then to blue, and finally to dark blue flames. Their bodies turned completely red, and black impurities constantly seeped out. Tantai Lien's body in particular was tens of times more than Chen Hao's. If they hadn't been burned to ashes the moment they appeared, the stench would have suffocated the 2 of them to death. As time passed by, Their red bodies started to glow with a white light. Then they started to change color bit by bit, just like flames. After 4 hours, their naked bodies had turned a deep blue color that was completely integrated with the flames. Boom! At the 6th hour, a dense qi suddenly emitted from between Chen Hao's and Tantai Lian's eyebrows at the same time. Especially Chen Hao, the qi he emitted was several times more powerful than Tantai Lian's. And it was also at this moment that Chen Hao's consciousness, which had sunk into a complete coma, finally gradually awakened. However, his body was still out of his control. Streaks of scorching blue flames flowed through the meridians in his body, following a mysterious path. Chen Hao's mental energy tendrils allowed him to clearly feel that at this moment, he seemed to have become one with another person's body. Another person. Chen Hao naturally knew that it was Tantai Lian. Moreover, in his current state, Chen Hao sensed the mystery of the fusion of yin and yang between heaven and earth. It was just like when he and Xia Yuyu had dual cultivated the 9 cycles of heavenly yang, and earthly yin formula. However, the method of circulation was completely different now. Although it was not necessarily as mysterious as the heavenly yang and earthly yin formula, his body was constantly filled with vigorous and pure yang energy. Furthermore, it was being absorbed by him, as if it was completely unaffected by his cultivation realm. What surprised Chen Hao was that in the depths of his mind, there seemed to be a figure that was no different from the vermilion bird he had seen just now. However, at this moment, it was very small, and its aura was not strong. It was more like a little bird. Its body was still like flames, but it carried a faint golden light. Those sharp and clear eyes, as Chen Hao sized it up, actually revealed a human-like smile. At this moment, something that shocked Chen Hao even more happened. Congratulations on obtaining the inheritance of our Phoenix clan. I am Phoenix. The thing that looked more like a little bird actually spoke human language in Chen Hao's mind. Its voice was tender, like that of a little boy. Congratulations on obtaining the inheritance of our Phoenix clan. I am Phoenix. Almost at the same time, the same voice sounded in Tantai Lian's mind. The voice was also tender, like that of a little girl. Phoenix? This isn't the inheritance of the vermilion bird? After a short moment of surprise, Chen Hao immediately asked curiously, inheritance of the vermilion bird? You humans often confuse our Phoenix clan with the vermilion bird. We do indeed look very similar to the vermilion bird. However, there is a big difference. Look, is the vermilion bird as handsome as me? It's also not as beautiful as Phoenix. Right, what's your name? Chen Hao. Oh, Chen Hao, the existence in your mind is very powerful. If he doesn't allow it, I will still. I won't say any more. The phoenix spoke halfway when it suddenly raised its claws in Chen Hao's mind, and very human-like covered its face. It seemed to be very scared. Chen Hao was slightly surprised, and immediately thought of the discussion about the sword spirit. It was obvious that the little bird was threatened by the mysterious existence. Alright, Chen Hao, now I'm still controlling your body. Quickly comprehend it yourself. In a while, you will be controlling it. Originally, as long as you fuse with Phoenix's yin and yang, your cultivation realm will increase even more, but I won't say anymore. I really won't say anymore, don't. What shocked Chen Hao was that the little bird seemed to be strangled by its neck. It struggled, waved its claws, and cried out loudly. After a while, it fell on the ground that Chen Hao's mind had condensed. It was obvious that it had been thrown by someone. Chen Hao did not ask. However, he frowned. From the little bird's words, Chen Hao already knew that the so-called fusion of yin and yang. Other than that kind of thing, what else could it be? I really won't say anymore, Chen Hao quickly. Before the little bird could finish its words, Chen Hao's mind suddenly rumbled. Chen Hao involuntarily jumped out of his mind, and his mind returned to his body. What on earth is it? Why is it so domineering? Damn it, this is my mind. Chen Hao felt like he had become a sparrow. He was even worse than a little bird. That thing had actually treated him as a turtle dove and blasted him out of his mind. What kind of fucking world was this? Although he cursed, at this moment, Chen Hao felt a little grateful to that existence. At least, his virginity was preserved by that thing. Although Chen Hao did not care about such things, he was now too young. Secondly, he did not want to have too many fetters. Thirdly, and most importantly, many of the cultivation techniques in the Taoist secret manual required one to maintain one's primordial yang, which was also the body of a virgin, in order to cultivate. If he really broke it now, he would lose a lot for a small gain. What's more, Tantai Lien would probably not be happy about it. After all, the two of them did not have that kind of relationship. For such a thing to happen, it meant that they had to rely on this kind of thing to establish a relationship. In other words, they had to conquer each other's bodies and conquer each other's minds. It was a bit of a reverse order, and Chunhao did not like it. Moreover, the most important thing was that Chunhao and Tantai Lien were considered to be partners. He could not turn a blind eye to her. He had to be responsible. Strange, it's clearly possible. Why can't it? While Chunhao was immersed in the mysterious energy, Tantai Lien was also communicating with Phoenix in her mind. Phoenix's human-like eyes met Tantai Lien's mind, and she muttered to herself in puzzlement. What's clearly possible, but it can't. Phoenix and my inheritance can clearly allow you to fuse your yin and yang with him, and raise your realm by several levels, but why is there no progress now? It's so strange. Wait, let me ask Phoenix. Although Tantai Lien's mind was in her mind, when she heard Phoenix's words, she instantly felt ashamed. If she was in control of her body, she was afraid that she would be directly awakened from her cultivation state, and even go mad. Although Tantai Lien was a young girl, how could she not know what the so-called fuse their yin and yang meant? Don't ask, he doesn't like me. Towards him. Anyway, don't ask. It's fine like this. I've already advanced to 4th stage zone, which is very high. And it's still rising. Tantai Lien said in a panic. However, Phoenix's eyes seemed to have not heard her words, and fell into a dull state. After a full 2 minutes, she regained her senses and said, Little Lien, you should first comprehend the mystery of the energy movement in your body. Later on, you will be in control of your body. Go, don't worry, it won't happen anymore. You have to work hard to make him like you. Otherwise, what am I going to do? I'm going to be separated from Phoenix. Hiss. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng and Enai Jianpain were respectively in 3 palace spaces close to the core palace. Their bodies were shrouded in fiery red pure yang energy, and they were all sitting cross-legged, immersed in cultivation. When they were ejected from the core palace, they regained consciousness. Although they did not know what had happened, they knew that Tantai Lien must have obtained the legacy of the ruins. And they were all pushed outside. With such rich pure yang energy, they did not want to waste time. Moreover, what surprised them was that after they woke up from their coma, the pure yang energy here did not seem to need them to refine and absorb it. It magically integrated into their bodies at an astonishing speed. And it was much faster than when they were cultivating and absorbing it. And after they started cultivating, the speed became even more astonishing. Their bodies seemed to be burning under the scorching energy, and waves of fishy smell constantly entered their nostrils. This made the 3 of them even more excited, and they used all their energy to absorb and release the majestic pure yang energy. Don't look. Another 6 hours later, they had already controlled their bodies and cultivated for 4 hours. Finally, all the flames that enveloped the 2 of them disappeared. The 2 of them were considered to have completed their cultivation and stopped. The moment they stopped cultivating, Tantai Lien and Chunhao opened their eyes at the same time. Chunhao was only slightly taken aback. Tantai Lien, on the other hand, screamed and covered her breasts with her hands, and said loudly, requesting monthly votes. Recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 174. First update. 3 more votes. Dark Mountain wants 3 more chapters. 23 more votes. Dark Mountain wants 4 more chapters. 43 more votes. 5 more chapters. Brothers and sisters, vote for me. Let Dark Mountain write with all his might. I want 5 more chapters. I beg for votes. Hiss. With a wave of his hand, Chunhao released a wisp of smoke from his hand, and stood between him and Tantai Lien. It blocked Tantai Lien's beautiful and alluring naked body. Even so, the image in Chunhao's mind was still frozen at the moment he opened his eyes, her jade-like skin, her full and round breasts, her two tender buds, her slender waist, her flat stomach, and the lush forest area. Tantai Lian's panicked and shy expression was also present. Bang bang bang. Tantai Lian felt as if her heart was about to jump out of her throat. The moment Chen Hao opened his eyes and saw her, she also saw the completely naked Chen Hao. However, in her panic, she did not see clearly. She only saw the white and smooth Chen Hao and screamed to protect herself. At that moment, when she saw Chen Hao release the fog attribute energy, she felt slightly more at ease. But what should she do if he saw her naked? How could she face him in the future? Even though she saw him, she was the one who was at a disadvantage. It was not the same. Tantai Lian was a little confused. Shaking his head fiercely, Chen Hao instantly cut off the thoughts in his mind and said, "Don't think too much. I didn't see anything. When I stopped, the little bird interfered with my eyes. Hurry up and put on your clothes, or else you'll really see it later." Ah? Hearing Chen Hao's words, Tantai Lian was so frightened that she quickly took out her clothes from her storage ring. After a series of rustling sounds, the two of them quickly put on their clothes. The smoke dispersed, and Tantai Lian's face was red. She did not even dare to look at Chen Hao. Although Chen Hao also felt a little strange, his expression was rather calm, as if nothing had happened. He sensed the boundless and vigorous energy in his body. Second-grade Grandmaster. Chen Hao said with a little excitement. In just a few short hours he, who was immersed in receiving the inheritance, did not feel anything at all. However, at this moment, he had actually directly soared from the 9th rank Martial Emperor level to the 2nd rank Martial Ancestor level. Chen Hao couldn't help being surprised. It had to be known that his abnormal body, as well as the barrier to the fusion of intent and martial arts, caused the amount of energy he needed to advance to the 1st grade to be several times higher than others. This was the main factor that prevented him from advancing. The greatest difficulty for other cultivators, comprehending the mysteries of the barrier, was basically non-existent for him. He had already comprehended how to operate the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth. It could be said that before reaching the divine realm, there was no barrier to comprehension. The only thing he needed was energy. 6th grade Ancestor. I've advanced to 6th grade Ancestor? After a short while, Tantai Lian said with shock and joy. Chen Hao frowned slightly. The little bit of excitement in his heart was immediately wiped out by Tantai Lian's 6th grade Ancestor level. They had both received the inheritance and cultivated together. However, he had only advanced by 2 grades, while Tantai Lian had advanced by 6 grades. What was there to be excited about? Rumble. At this moment, the palace door, which had already lost the restriction, opened with a rumble. Chen Hao and Tantai Lian's strong senses immediately caught the aura of Li Yifeng, Yang Fan, and Enai Jianpain. Chen Hao is here too? Li Yifeng suddenly said with a little surprise. Yang Fan and Enai Jianpain also looked surprised. In their minds, Tantai Lian must have received the inheritance. As for Chen Hao, he should have been sent out of the palace like them. Now all the restrictions in the palace had disappeared. The pure yang energy was also gone. It was obvious that Tantai Lian had successfully received the inheritance. I just came in. Chen Hao looked at the 3 of them. He could clearly feel that the 3 of them had made a breakthrough in their cultivation. Their bodies were emitting vigorous pure yang energy. Not bad. It seems that your cultivation has improved greatly too. Enai Jianpain was already a 2nd grade martial ancestor when he was in the Xuanwu Empire. When he came out of the Endless Sea, he had already advanced to 3rd grade. However, his current aura was obviously that of a 4th grade. Li Yifeng and Yang Fan had also advanced to 3rd grade martial ancestor. Moreover, although the 3 of them did not receive the inheritance of the phoenix, the vigorous pure yang aura on their bodies showed that they had comprehended the heavenly sun. Moreover, in this special space of the historical remains, the 3 of them had obtained a trace of the phoenix's bloodline. Before reaching a certain level, they had the ability to store boundless pure yang energy. Haha. No matter how much I've improved, I can't compare to you. You should have reached the ancestor level, right? What about Xiaolian? Li Yifeng asked with a trace of excitement. I didn't improve much. I just went from 9th grade Emperor level to 2nd grade Ancestor level, Chen Hao said with a smile on his face. Damn it. It would have been better if Li Yifeng had not asked. Since he had asked, Chen Hao, who had just been defeated by Tan Tai Lien, naturally had to find balance. Cough cough, Tan. Xiaolian received the inheritance of the historical remains and reached 6th grade Ancestor level? That's quite impressive. Chen Hao did not care about the feelings of the three of them and said again. Tan Tai Lien was also immersed in the surprise of increasing her cultivation level. However, when Chen Hao did not admit that he had also received the inheritance, she frowned slightly but did not say anything. At this moment, when she heard that Chen Hao was going to call her by her name, but changed it to Xiaolian, her frowning eyebrows relaxed a little. Even she did not notice the change in her expression. At the same time, Yang Fan and Enai Jianpain also looked at Tan Tai Lien in shock. 6th grade Ancestor level. Just by receiving an inheritance, she, who was originally the weakest, had become the strongest? However, when they thought about how they had only drunk a mouthful of soup and had advanced by 1 grade, and how their physical bodies had undergone shocking changes, they suddenly realized that it was reasonable for Tan Tai Lien, who had eaten meat, to advance by so much. On the contrary, Chen Hao, who had also drunk the soup, had advanced by 1 grade more than them. It was even more strange that he had advanced by 1 grade. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 24 figures streaked across the void like meteors and landed among the mountains. We've already gone around half a circle, but we still haven't sensed anything. If we still can't find them, we'd better start the training first. If they're running around randomly, it'll be like looking for a needle in a haystack. It'll take too much time. If we can obtain a supreme grade spirit weapon, what's there to be afraid of? There are countless ancient city remains here, and we have 6 months of training. There'll be plenty of opportunities. It doesn't matter if we delay for a day or two. These 24 people. Buzz buzz buzz. Just as everyone was arguing around Fan Yin, a buzzing sound suddenly came from between Fan Yin's eyebrows, causing everyone to shut their mouths. Nearby, Fan Yin's eyes suddenly flashed with an excited glow as he spoke in a deep voice. However, he immediately frowned and asked, "Why are there only 3? 3? Whose? There's none from Chen Hao and Tan Tai Lien. Could they have cultivated separately? Let's capture them and ask them first." Fan Yin, quick, lead the way. Yu Wuqing said. Strange. Why can't I feel it? In the palace, Chen Hao and the other 4 did not leave immediately. Due to the sudden appearance of the legacy in the ruins, Chen Hao had yet to decipher the spiritual brand. Originally, Chen Hao wanted to first comprehend the spiritual brand in his body, and then help Tan Tai Lien and the other 3 to decipher it. He would keep his own spiritual brand. It was better to let a fat sheep come to him than to find one himself. However, at this moment, his cultivation had clearly improved, but he could not capture the spiritual brand in his body. Just as Chen Hao was puzzled, the treasure-hunting sword spirit suddenly said in Chen Hao's mind, "Someone's coming." After the pure yang energy disappeared, the treasure-hunting sword spirit also released its senses. At this moment, Chen Hao was comprehending, so it was naturally in charge of investigating. Yu Wuqing and the other 4. So fast. Chen Hao was slightly shocked. He opened his eyes immediately and looked at Tan Tai Lien and the other 3 who were sitting cross-legged beside him. "You've comprehended it?" Tan Tai Lien asked immediately. "I can't sense any spiritual brand in my body. It seems that my cultivation is not enough." "They're coming. You guys go first," Chen Hao said coldly. "Chen Hao, before coming to the pure yang relics, our cultivation was not enough, and we would only be a burden to you. But now, I'm confident that I can take down a 5th or 6th grade martial grandmaster. I'll fight with you." "Me too. Me too," Li Yifeng and Enai Jianpain said in unison. At this moment, the 3 of them seemed to have regained the confidence they had in Xuanwu Empire. Yang Fan's ordinary face shone with a hint of determination. He restrained his aura to the extreme. Li Yifeng's handsome face shone with a hint of coldness. He looked at Chen Hao with a hint of indomitable will. On the other hand, Enai Jianpain was as calm as a mountain. His eyes were sharp and burning. I'm already a 6th-grade emperor intent. Tantai Lian's majestic and terrifying spiritual aura spread out. Her otherworldly little face seemed to have regained the appearance of when she had violently killed her opponents. Looking at the expressions of the 4 people, Chen Hao frowned slightly. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "All right. They have more people. We can't fight them head-on. Follow me first." Boom. After saying that, Chen Hao flew into the sky, broke through the top floor of the palace, and flew into the void. Whoosh 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 whoosh. At the same time, Tantai Lian and the other 3 quickly followed and flew into the depths of the relics. Trying to run? When Fan Yin, who was still a few hundred miles away, sensed the tracking talisman moving quickly, he immediately frowned and said, "Speed up. They're flying into the depths of the relics." Did they discover us? Impossible. Those 3 are only lower-grade martial great ancestors. How could they discover us? They should be just leaving. Chase them, hurry up. Whoosh. The 7th-grade emperor intent Fan Yin's speed suddenly increased again. Among the 24 people, other than Fan Yin, there were 5 7th-grade martial great ancestors, including Yu Wuqing. One of the 7th-grade martial great ancestors had an arrogant expression. He flew in the air as if he was taking a stroll. He looked extremely relaxed. His figure flashed and he arrived beside Fan Yin. He said, "Too slow. There are only 3 lower-grade martial great ancestors. Fan Yin, I'll bring you over first. You can just follow behind. P.S. I wish all the brothers and sisters who support AOT on a happy Chinese Valentine's Day. Begging for monthly votes. Begging for more." Chapter 175. Today's monthly votes aren't good enough. Wuxian was already forcing himself to be spirited, but when he saw the monthly votes he became weak. What a fast speed! Chen Hao, who had advanced to 2nd stage martial great master, had a powerful soul, and his range of perception had increased by several times. When Fan Yin was brought closer by the fast cultivator, Chen Hao frowned slightly. "They've caught up?" Li Yifeng asked. "Yes. However, it's not a big team. There are only 2 people who are very fast. That's strange. They want to deal with me with just these 2 people? Could it be?" Chen Hao frowned slightly. Then his eyes lit up and he thought to himself, "The spiritual brand on my body must have disappeared when I received the inheritance. The will of the inheritance that Phoenix and Phoenix left behind is the Nirvana flame. When it refined Tantai Lian in my body, it should have burned away all the abnormalities. The spiritual brand on Tantai Lian's body must have disappeared as well. Otherwise, she would have been able to sense it since she's already a 6th-stage martial great master, and her spiritual power is extremely strong. Interesting." The corners of Chen Hao's mouth suddenly curled into an evil smile as he flew at high speed. "What's wrong?" Tantai Lian was confused. "You're a martial great master, and my spiritual power is also strong. Our spiritual brands should have been wiped away when we advanced. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for me not to sense it. Haha, they should be chasing after Yang Fan and the other 2. They didn't notice Xiao Lian and me. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to chase after us first. Isn't this interesting? Let's go, we'll speed up. It'll be easy once we enter any ancient city ruins." Whoosh. A gust of wind blew past, and Chen Hao instantly turned into a gust of wind. At the same time, Tantai Lian and the other 3 suddenly realized that the air in front of them had lost its original resistance as they flew at high speed. Instantly, their speed soared again. Yang Fan, who had already comprehended half of the wind attribute, was like a fish in water. In addition, the 5 of them now contained a vast amount of pure yang energy in their bodies, causing their speed to far surpass their cultivation base. Although they were only a few hundred miles apart, if they wanted to catch up, it would definitely not be done in a short period of time. So fast. Fan Yin frowned slightly. Of course. I was only half a step away from comprehending the true essence of the space attribute. Other than Lung Yihan, no one below 9th grade martial grandmaster is faster than me. Hearing Fan Yin's words, the young man immediately said with a trace of pride. His eyes could not help but glance at Fan Yin's chest. Through the collar, the towering snow-white cleavage was clearly visible, causing the young man to swallow his saliva uncontrollably. Especially at this moment, he was still holding Fan Yin's soft little hand. What I'm saying is they're so fast. What? Are they fast? Fan Yin's words made the proud young man frown. He suddenly summoned his energy and accelerated again. Bang! Rumble! From afar, the sound of a huge energy explosion reached the ears of Chen Hao and the others. As they quickly approached, a huge city that stretched as far as the eye could see appeared in front of Chen Hao's group. Just by looking at the scale of this city, it was obviously larger than the Pure Sun ancient city. At this moment, the first restriction gate of the city had been blasted open. Many cultivators were destroying the restriction inside. It's here. Get down. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Chen Hao's group immediately landed in the city as fast as lightning. They've stopped flying. They should have entered the ancient city ruins. I told you, they shouldn't have discovered us. Fan Yin said with a smile when she sensed that the tracking seal had slowed down abruptly and was not moving forward at all. Indeed, after flying for a few hundred miles, a huge ancient city appeared in front of them. It's in this palace. Fan Yin said as she pointed to a palace below them. Let me do it. You just wait outside. The young man smiled and said. Fan Yin nodded. With the young man's cultivation, it would not be a problem for him to capture 3 lower-grade martial grandmasters alive. He could do it in minutes. However, 5 minutes had passed, and the young man still had not come out. In the palace, she could sense that the 3 tracking talismans were just moving around casually. This made Fan Yin frown slightly. Her valiant spiritual tentacles immediately spread out and merged into the palace. At this moment, even without the tracking talisman, she could sense the aura of Yang Fan and the other 2. However, what surprised her was that she could not capture the young man's aura. What's going on? Fan Yin was shocked. Could it be that he's still hiding his aura to deal with 3 lower-grade martial grandmasters? No, he's only powerful because he has comprehended the essence of the space attribute. Even if he's hiding his aura, I should still be able to sense it. Hiss. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from the entrance of the palace. In an instant, something that looked like a watermelon flew quickly toward Fan Yin. You're courting death. Fan Yin shouted, and a majestic spiritual power shone from between her eyebrows. However, when she saw clearly what was flying toward her, her eyes widened in shock and she almost screamed. A head. The young man's head. What made Fan Yin's hair stand on end was that the young man's expression had a trace of arrogance and haughtiness. It was obvious that when he died he did not know that he was in danger. He was a 7th-grade martial grandmaster, and was the fastest and most powerful among them. However, he had killed them silently. Ah! At this moment Fan Yin suddenly screamed in horror. Her violent spiritual power suddenly surged out of her body, and condensed into rays of sword light that attacked her surroundings. Boom boom boom. 30 feet behind Fan Yin, the rays of terrifying spiritual power sword light made a huge explosion sound. Fan Yin did not even turn her head. With a swoosh, she instantly moved 100 feet away. Her whole body was covered in cold sweat, and her spiritual power tendrils protected her body as she looked in the direction of the explosion. Her intuition, which was on the verge of death, saved her life. An extraordinarily handsome figure appeared in front of her eyes. You. How is that possible? If I were you, when I escaped with my life, the first thing I would do would be to run away and not be surprised. The perception of a 7th-grade martial grandmaster is indeed not bad. Xiaolian, why don't I let you try? Chen Hao smiled and stood in the air as he spoke. Okay. Following Tantai Lian's voice, her beautiful figure also strangely appeared beside Chen Hao. At the same time, a pure, vigorous and boundless spiritual power suddenly spread out. With a hiss, Tantai Lian actually charged towards Fan Yin violently. Tantai Lian, who was a 6th-grade martial grandmaster, and had the inheritance of Phoenix, was able to hide her spiritual power from Fan Yin's perception under the cover of Chen Hao. This was enough to show that she had the ability to fight against Fan Yin. Chen Hao did not need to participate in a battle that did not pose any threat. It was better to let Tantai Lian train. Chen Hao, who was a second-grade martial grandmaster, currently had an unimaginably strong fusion of energy. Chen Hao had absolute confidence that he could fight against a 9th-grade martial grandmaster. That 7th-grade martial grandmaster youth, under his sneak attack, was no different from killing a chicken. How is that possible? How is that possible? You want to kill me? Dream on, Fan Yin said in fear. He frantically took out an almost transparent spiritual artifact short sword. Instantly, his body became streaks of sword light. At the same time, he quickly retreated. He was obviously scared out of his wits and did not dare to continue fighting. He only wanted to block Tantai Lian's attack and take the opportunity to escape. However, Chen Hao was like a ghost and instantly blocked his escape route. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng and Enai Jianpain, the 3 targets, also walked out of the palace. However, they did not approach and instead watched the show from afar. Their strength was not enough to fight against a 7th-grade martial grandmaster. One did not dare to continue fighting, one was filled with fighting spirit and confidence, and one could appear at any time to block the way. Tantai Lian, who was only a 6th-grade martial grandmaster, actually managed to suppress her opponent in a short half a minute. No matter if it was in terms of adaptability or spiritual power, she surpassed the 7th-grade martial grandmaster Fan Yin. Moreover, Tantai Lian's spiritual power contained a majestic and terrifying pure yang energy. At first, Tantai Lian was not familiar with the use of this energy. However, after a few short exchanges, she was like a fish in water and her power became more and more violent. She actually gave up the advantage of a martial grandmaster's long-range attack and kept approaching Fan Yin. She merged her spiritual power and pure yang energy into her sword and fought in close combat. Boom! Boom! Terrifying spiritual power destroyed a large part of the palace that had lost its restrictions as the two of them fought. The huge commotion attracted the attention of a few people who were training in the city. Among them, a few experts came to watch the show. As for those with low cultivation, they did not dare to come over and continued to break through the restrictions. Don't kill me. My brother is an inner disciple of the sword faction, Fan Fong. If you kill me, you will die a horrible death. Fan Yin saw that there was no hope of escaping, and that the main group would not be able to arrive in a short period of time. As he defended against Tantai Lian's attacks, he said loudly, "My soul brand has the seal of life and death that my brother condensed. Even if you kill Yu Wuqing and the rest, you can forget about hiding it from my brother." Sword faction, Chen Hao said with a slight frown. That's right. A rank 6 sect, the sword faction. The corners of Chen Hao's mouth curled up slightly, and he spoke with a trace of arrogance. What a high-level sect. Unfortunately, I'm not afraid of threats. However, you are senior brother Fan Fong's younger sister, Fan Yin? Right at this moment, one of the spectating experts suddenly asked. As he spoke, his body flashed and he rushed toward Tantai Lian and Fan Yin. He shouted, "Stop." With a casual wave of his hand, a terrifying river of yuan power surged between Tantai Lian and Fan Yin with a boom, directly forcing the two of them to retreat. Whoosh! Chen Hao instantly flew to Tantai Lian's side and stood in front of Tantai Lian. His expression was cold as he stared at the expert who had interfered with the fight. Even he did not expect such a sudden unforeseen event. Furthermore, that casual attack earlier was extremely powerful. It was obvious that he was a rank 8 or even rank 9 martial emperor. More importantly, Chen Hao could clearly sense that the man's body contained the aura of the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth. As if she had found her savior, Fan Yin moved to the side of the expert with lightning speed and asked, "Senior brother, do you know my brother?" Who doesn't know senior brother Fan Fong? Before we disciples of the sword faction came here to train, senior brother Fan Fong had specially instructed us to take care of you. Don't worry, with senior brother here, no one will be able to harm you. That expert looked at Fan Yin's voluptuous figure and said arrogantly. After he finished speaking, he looked at Chen Hao and Tantai Lian and said, "If you don't want to die, scram. If it wasn't for the sex restrictions, I wouldn't mind killing you too for the sake of my younger sister Fan Yin." Second update. Seeking monthly votes. Chapter 176. First update. Begging for monthly votes. More than 30 monthly votes yesterday, less than 40, but Wuxian will explode in the fourth update. Can today's monthly votes be more intense? Please everyone, 20 monthly votes plus 1 chapter. Wuxian wants 5, 6, 7 chapters. Come on, brothers and sisters, cast your votes and let Wuxian explode. What? You don't agree? Seeing Chen Hao's cold eyes, the sect disciple standing with his hands behind his back narrowed his eyes and said disdainfully. Tantai Lian gently pulled Chen Hao's arm behind Chen Hao. Senior, don't let them go. He has a 5 elements combination spiritual weapon. Fan Ying could feel the strength of the young man beside her. She, who had just begged for mercy, was now looking at Chen Hao fiercely and sending a message to the sect disciple beside her. What? A 5 elements combination spiritual weapon? The sect disciple was slightly surprised. He looked at Chen Hao with eyes full of greed. Then the aura around him surged crazily. At the same time, he said indifferently, "Hand it over and scram. Otherwise, don't blame me for being too strong and merciless." Chen Hao's expression did not change. He waved Tantai Lian away and stared at the sect master in front of him. He said, 8th grade martial grandmaster or 9th grade martial grandmaster. Let's talk nicely. Maybe I'll let it go for the sake of the Flying Sword sect. Unfortunately, you're full of nonsense and greedy. Very good. I'd like to see how strong you are. You do have some ability, but you're only a lower grade martial grandmaster. You don't know how high the sky is. I'm too strong, so I'll fulfill your wish. In your next life, remember to take a step back and you'll be able to see the sky. When Tai Zigong heard Chen Hao's words, he smiled. His expression was calm. He waved his hand and sent Fan Ying away. Layers of terrifying vortexes rippled from his back. In the blink of an eye, 2 brilliant energy wings appeared on his shoulders. Space-ripping wings? Powerful. The Sky Splitter wings was the strongest movement technique in the postnatal realm of the Sword Control sect, and only disciples that had comprehended the circulation of the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth were able to cultivate it. By relying on these 2 types of auras, one was able to produce a trace of energy that could link up with space, and its speed was shocking to the extreme. It's on par with our Startling Cloud Pavilion's Startling Swan technique. A disciple of the Startling Cloud Pavilion, a 6th grade sect, said to the person beside him. That's right. That disciple on the 100 Empire ranking is truly a newborn calf. No matter how talented he is, Tai Zigong is only a rank 8 martial ancestor. Now that he has mastered the space-ripping wings, even if the 2 of us join forces, I'm afraid we won't be a match for him. Moreover, Tai Zigong is a disciple of the rank 6 sect, the sword riding school. That brat is truly seeking his own death. Something's not right. Don't forget that when we came out to train, the sect told us not to clash with the disciples on the 100 Empire ranking as much as possible. After all, they might join our sect. But this Tai Zigong was clearly going to let them go. Yet he wanted them to hand over something. And now he's directly using the void-shattering wings. Clearly, this thing made Tai Zigong a little excited. Could it be some precious treasure? Rings of energy of the 5 elements circulated and emitted a misty 7-colored radiance. Before he even made his move, his entire aura was already extremely valiant. A terrifying pressure enveloped an area of several hundred meters. Tantai Lian and the other 3, as well as many spectating experts, all retreated one after another. Tai Zigong's valiant aura caused Fan Yin's face to be filled with a hint of ruthlessness and excitement. Even she had never imagined that she would be so lucky to encounter a disciple of the sword riding school, when she was on the verge of death. Now, she was almost certain that not only would she be able to kill Chen Hao and the others, she would also be able to obtain a portion of the top-grade combination spirit artifact. Given Tai Zigong's respectful tone towards her brother, he definitely wouldn't take it all for himself. Then he wouldn't have to share it with Yu Wuqing and the others. Just as the aura on Tai Zigong's body surged towards Chen Hao like a mountain flood, Chen Hao's expression was solemn. Waves of incomparably fierce battle intent exploded from his body. Without waiting for Tai Zigong to make his move, he abruptly took a step forward. Clang, clang, clang. Dazzling 5-colored sword light, like lightning in the clear sky, whizzed out. It contained boundless energy of the 5 elements and pure yang, with a terrifying aura that could destroy the heavens and the earth. It took the lead to attack Tai Zigong. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Along with the terrifying 5 elemental sword light, smaller sword rays filled the surroundings of the 5 elemental sword light. Like small snakes, they covered the sky and covered the earth. The moment Chen Hao made his move, he took out the 5 elemental spiritual sword. The valiant strength of a 9th-grade martial ancestor caused Chen Hao to feel immense pressure. At the same time, he was also completely excited. He wanted to have a head-on battle to see the extent of his strength. Not to mention that Tai Zigong was an 8th-grade martial ancestor. Even if it was a 9th-grade martial ancestor, Chen Hao would still do the same. You have some skills, but the difference is still too great. Tai Zigong snorted disdainfully. The wings on his shoulders suddenly flapped violently. Whoosh, an incomparably fierce wind suddenly rose. The void seemed to be torn apart by the wind. In the ear-piercing sound, the space around Tai Zigong strangely flashed with strange fluctuations. It was like the distortion of space when the transmission formation appeared. It actually easily dissolved Chen Hao's powerful attack into nothingness. Whoosh! Under the wings that contain the energy of the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth, Tai Zigong's body rotated at a high speed. The moment he broke Chen Hao's attack, his wings suddenly flapped and a sword appeared in his hand. With a hiss, it seemed to tear apart the void. With a terrifying speed, he attacked Chen Hao. Chen Hao's face changed color in horror. Tai Zigong's fighting talent was far beyond Chen Hao's imagination. Not only did he operate the 5 elements and comprehend the yin and yang of heaven and earth, but he also relied on the energy of these 2 realms to have a trace of the ability that only the martial god could have. Although it was only a little bit of aura, it was like condensing a black hole, and easily dissolved all of Chen Hao's attacks. Hiss! A strand of peerlessly swift and fierce sword chi approached within 30 meters of Chen Hao in the blink of an eye. Boom! Ding! Ding! First, there was the terrifying sound of energy colliding. Then, Chen Hao and Tai Zigong's figures actually advanced instead of retreating. Under the raging energy that filled the sky, they directly engaged in close combat. The crisp and ear-piercing sound of metal clashing, accompanied by the sword light that filled the sky, caused everything around the 2 of them to suddenly explode with a rumble. At this moment, the 5 element spiritual swords had been combined into one. They were held in Chen Hao's hand, shining with bright light. In just a moment, they had exchanged many blows. Chen Hao's figure twisted and turned, high and low. He had been fighting with Tai Zigong in close combat, flying up and down. Sometimes he was above the palace, and sometimes he was flying in the air. This caused the onlookers to open their eyes wide. It should be known that in this battle, except for Tan Tai Lian and the other 3, everyone thought that the outcome would be determined in one move. However, at this moment, Chen Hao, who was only a lower-grade martial grandmaster, was completely suppressed by Tai Zigong's violent, sharp, and terrifying attacks. However, he was not blown away or defeated by Tai Zigong's powerful energy. Instead, he advanced step by step and did not panic at all. Tai Zigong was also shocked. The others were only watching from afar. As he was in the battle, he felt it more deeply. Obviously, he had the absolute advantage in terms of power, and had the ability to defeat his opponent in one move. However, his opponent had used the mystery of power to the extreme, causing his energy to feel as if it was attacking cotton. He had a feeling that he could not do his best. It seemed that he had the upper hand, but he felt that he was completely restrained by his opponent. Especially after a few moves, his opponent seemed to have predicted the landing point of his attack. Swoosh! Swoosh! Just as Chen Hao and Tai Zigong were fighting, more than 20 figures flew over from afar. They had a look of surprise on their faces and landed beside Fan Yin. Fan Yin, what's going on? Where's Mouj? Yu Wuqing stared in shock at Chen Hao, who was fighting with an expert in the void, and asked. The other youths also had a look of intense shock on their faces. At this moment, even a pig could see how powerful Chen Hao was. Hearing Yu Wuqing's words, everyone looked at Fan Yin, whose hair was messy but whose expression was complicated. At this moment, Fan Yin's expression was both shocked and gloating. Mouj has been killed by Chen Hao. If it weren't for senior brother Tai Zigong, I would have died in Chen Hao's hands. Senior brother Tai Zigong is my brother's junior brother, a disciple of the 6th grade sword clan. Yu Wuqing, you almost got all of us killed. I've already told senior brother Tai Zigong about the supreme grade spirit weapon. You should know what to do. Yu Wuqing's expression changed. What are you waiting for? Kill that bitch Tantai Lian and the other 3. Fan Yin looked at Tantai Lian in the distance with resentment, and said to Yu Wuqing and the rest. It was one thing for Tantai Lian to be prettier than her, but a 6th-stage Yizong was actually more powerful than her, and had almost killed her. This was something she could not tolerate. Alright, seeing the current situation, these disciples knew that there was no way out. Indeed, if Tai Zigong had not appeared, they would not have been able to kill Chen Hao with the strength that he had displayed. On the contrary, they would have been killed by Chen Hao one by one. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Yu Wuqing took the lead, bypassing Chen Hao and Tai Zigong's battle range, and rushed toward Tantai Lian, and the other 3 in the distance. The expressions of Tantai Lian, and the other 3 changed drastically when the 20 over disciples appeared. The 4 of them looked at each other, and their expressions were extremely grave. Without Chen Hao, how could the 4 of them withstand so many experts from the other side? Escape? Chen Hao was still fighting, and the outcome was unknown. Fight. How long could they last? However, it seemed that they could only fight. Hiss. Yang Fan's ordinary face immediately withdrew all his aura. In an instant, it was as if he had turned into a breeze. At the same time, he transmitted his voice to Tantai Lian and the other 2, saying, I'll launch a sneak attack. Hold on, as long as Chen Hao can win, we still have a chance to live. Tantai Lian, if you can escape, then escape. Your strength is no weaker than any of them. Tantai Lian frowned slightly, but she shook her head. A majestic and terrifying mental energy spread out at this moment. In an instant, a scorching hot energy bloomed from between her eyebrows with a boom. Although Chen Hao's mind was completely immersed in the battle, it was impossible for him not to notice the arrival of more than 20 people. The expression on his face became even more solemn. However, at this moment he was unable to free himself. The 8th grade martial grandmaster Tai Zigong's talent and battle strength were absolutely terrifying. It was impossible for him to distract Chen Hao. Otherwise, he would be defeated by the opponent's absolute strength in one move. Originally, Chen Hao was not in a hurry. Such a stressful battle was undoubtedly the best training for him. However, at this moment, boom! When a bright red light shone from Tantai Lian's forehead and her entire body seemed to be enveloped in flames, Chen Hao's forehead also exploded. Requesting monthly votes, recommendation votes. Many thanks, Luoshi's true love Dengting, brothers Piao Hong has been promoted to the 2nd alliance of Aotian. Thank you. There are 3 more updates today. Brothers with monthly votes, please vote for Wushan. Force Wushan to go all out. Chapter 177. Second update. Begging for votes. Begging for an explosion. Boom. Chen Hao, who was in close combat with Tai Zigong, suddenly burst into raging flames. With a swing of his sword, a roaring fire dragon was formed, forcing the powerful Tai Zigong to retreat 100 zhang. Tai Zigong resisted the surging energy in his body, his eyes filled with extreme shock. Whoosh! Chen Hao did not chase after Tai Zigong. Instead, he rushed to Tantai Lian's side at a terrifying speed. Jiega, 2 strange cries suddenly burst out from Chen Hao and Tantai Lian's bodies. At the same time, the 2 figures disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Rumble! The majestic flames immediately condensed into a flying bird that was dozens of zhang long, completely formed by flames. A destructive aura instantly enveloped a radius of a few hundred zhang. All of you die. Chen Hao's cold voice suddenly sounded like the king of hell. The giant bird suddenly opened its mouth and shot out terrifying fire arrows. In an instant, there were dozens of them, whistling as they rushed toward the 20 over disciples who were besieging Yang Fan, Li Yifeng and Ni Jianpain. Due to the sudden change of events, The 20 disciples did not even have time to react before they were engulfed by the flames. Following a series of explosions, cries of agony could be heard. It was unknown how many disciples were devoured by the terrifying flames in just a single move. Several 7th-grade martial grandmaster experts were scared out of their wits. They used all their strength and frantically scattered in all directions. However, at this moment, from the giant bird's mouth that Chen Hao and Tantai Lian had condensed, more terrifying fire dragons suddenly shot out. Each fire dragon contained an extremely sharp sword light. Under the control of the two people's combined energy, they became scythes that reaped lives. 4 7th-grade martial grandmasters, including Yu Wuqing, were turned into dust amidst their terrified screams. Phoenix Inheritance. Let's go. The shocked Tai Zigong suddenly waved his hand and grabbed the dumbfounded Fan Yin. The wings on his back flapped hundreds of times in an instant. With a whoosh, they fled into the distance like lightning. Trying to run? Chen Hao let out a roar. Like a flaming phoenix, he flapped his huge wings, which were hundreds of feet long. With a hiss, he chased after Tai Zigong and Fan Yin at an even more terrifying speed. Tai Zigong felt the terrifying hot aura behind him getting closer and closer, and the expression on his face became extremely shocked. He frowned and finally threw Fan Yin behind him. At the same time, he quickly took out a crystal-clear pill that emitted a majestic power and stuffed it into his mouth. Ah, senior brother! Fan Yin screamed in terror, her beautiful face becoming incomparably pale. She frantically waved her claws, wanting to grab Tai Zigong, but at this moment, it was futile. Tai Zigong had clearly abandoned her and left. Husband and wife were birds of the same fate. When disaster struck, they would fly separately. Moreover, Tai Zigong had nothing to do with her. In a life-and-death situation, he could even protect himself. Why would he care about her? Frightened, Fan Yin activated all her mental strength, but it was still futile. The endless sea of fire instantly drowned her. She only heard Chen Hao's cold words, "Serves you right." Her head shook and she lost consciousness. Swoosh. After a brief obstruction, Tai Zigong, who swallowed the pill and abandoned the package, suddenly seemed to tear the space apart. In a flash, he was thousands of feet away. Chen Hao and Tantai Lian, who were together, could not catch up even if they wanted to. The power of the Phoenix's nirvana was a power that completely exceeded their realm. The time that it could last was very short. Therefore, even though Chen Hao knew that Tai Zigong's escape was a great hidden danger, there was nothing he could do. In the world of cultivation, among the endless mountains, a figure sat cross-legged on the top of a mountain, surrounded by clouds and mist. He, who was immersed in cultivation, suddenly heard an explosion in his mind, causing him to open his eyes in horror. Little Yin? Something happened to Little Yin? Who is it? Who is it? The figure's face instantly twisted. In an instant, a white jade token flashed from between his eyebrows and floated in front of him. This white token was the seal of life and death that Fan Yin had mentioned. At the same time, the figure pinched a sword gesture. With a swoosh, a vigorous energy was poured into the jade token. Immediately, the jade token emitted rays of milky white light, and a mirror image condensed into a burning flame. A vague picture appeared in the flame. It was Chen Hao, Tantai Lian, and Fan Yin, who was struggling in fear. Then, Chen Hao smashed Fan Yin's head with a punch. Sister. The figure's expression was crazily twisted. He closed his eyes tightly and trembled violently. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. I want you to die. I want you to die. Sister. The roar was like rolling thunder, dispersing the auspicious clouds around him. Fan Fong. Yes, this figure was Fan Yin's brother, Fan Fong. Fan Yin was his most beloved sister, who was only 2 years older than him. He, Fan Fong, and his sister Fan Yin were all top geniuses. 2 years ago, he entered the 100 Empire ranking and obtained the proud 35th place, entering the 6th rank sect, the sword-controlling sect. This was not what he was most proud of. What he was most proud of was that his cultivation talent was truly displayed after he entered the sword-controlling sect. In just 2 years, he broke through the martial sage and martial god realms from the 7th grade martial grandmaster realm, and entered the legendary golden elixir realm. He broke the record of the sword-controlling sect's 100 empire-ranking disciples, and became an inner disciple in the shortest time. He also became the focus of the sword-controlling sect. His fame in the sword-controlling sect was not inferior to that of the core disciples. However, Fanning was different from him. She was an intentional person. Although they were brother and sister, they were not related by blood. In addition, they were about the same age and had been childhood sweethearts. Although they did not cross the line, their relationship had long surpassed that of brother and sister. He had long been prepared. He had made an agreement with the outer sect elder in charge of selecting disciples on the 100 empire ranking that no matter what his sister did, she would be accepted into the sword-controlling sect. When Fanning arrived, the brother and sister would be reunited. More importantly, when Fanning truly matured, she would become his Dao companion. One for martial arts, one for intent. She would be the most perfect Dao companion. Moreover, she would be his most trusted Dao companion. She would be someone who could truly go through life and death with him. But now everything was ruined. It was ruined by the hands of that youth. Hatred, overflowing hatred, almost caused him to fall into madness and lose his Dao heart. Among the spectating experts, a disciple of the startling cloud pavilion stared at Chen Hao and Tantai Lian's figures that were slowly descending. Their bodies were still flickering with the radiance of flames as he muttered with an astonished expression. The Phoenix's inheritance. The legend is actually true. What legend? Another disciple asked. 10,000 years ago, the godly martial empire was in existence that could contend against the powerful sects of the cultivation world. Do you know the main reason? It was the inheritance of the divine beasts. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, Qilin Phoenix. Among them, there were two people who possessed the Phoenix's inheritance. A man and a woman. There were a total of 7 people, and these 7 people jointly controlled the godly martial empire. If they hadn't shed all pretenses of cordiality and started killing each other for the sake of the throne, the godly martial empire wouldn't have declined. That disciple slowly said. Legend has it that the 7 of them fought in a chaotic battle. Among them, the Phoenix and the Phoenix were one body, while the other 5 were one body and didn't give way to each other. In the end, all of them died, causing the godly martial empire to decline. However, their inheritances were all left behind in the godly martial empire. This kind of divine beast inheritance has its own consciousness and ability. After the 7 of them died in battle, they sealed the godly martial empire together and turned it into a ruin. They also returned to their original state, waiting for the person who is qualified to obtain the inheritance to appear. No way? You mean that in this godly martial ruins, there's the Phoenix's inheritance and the inheritance of the 5 divine beasts? That's right. It was originally just a legend, and even our cultivation world couldn't verify it. Ever since this godly martial ruins was discovered, batches of disciples came to train. Many of them were able to obtain the inheritance of the ruins, but none of them were able to obtain the inheritance of the divine beasts. Therefore, very few people mentioned it. I only found out about it when I heard my ancestor casually mentioned it before I started training. Alright, let's go. The Phoenix's inheritance has already appeared. Perhaps there are other divine beasts' inheritances in the area where the godly martial ruins open this time. After all, they all died in the great battle back then, so it's very likely that they're all in this area. We have to hurry up. If we can obtain the inheritance, there won't be a problem for us to be promoted to inner court disciples. Even becoming a core disciple is only a matter of time. Let's go. Whoosh whoosh. After the 2 of them finished speaking, they turned into streams of light and flew towards the depths of the ruins with excited and hopeful expressions. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Jianping looked at Chen Hao and Tantai Lian, who had returned to their side together in shock. Tantai Lian blushed. Chen Hao, on the other hand, looked calm as he said, I only obtained a part of the inheritance. I didn't expect that after joining forces with little Lian, the power would be so great. Unfortunately, the duration is too short. Otherwise, even Tai Zigong would have been left behind. Why are you standing there like idiots? After the battle, the first thing to do is to collect the spoils of war. Collect the spoils of war? The 3 of them were stunned. Chen Hao smiled and waved his hand in the air. Immediately, the storage rings and intact spirit sword scattered on the ground flew into his hands. He said, "The spoils should be good." They went for wool and came home shorn. "Let's go. Let's get out of here first. There's basically no threat now. The ruins here obviously have endless benefits for cultivation. Our cultivation is still too weak, so the key is to raise our realm. Let's go." Awo. Awo. Just as Chen Hao finished speaking, the roars of demonic beasts suddenly came from outside the ancient city. The billowing aura of demonic beasts instantly violently filled the space between heaven and earth. The sky darkened. A tide of demonic beasts that lurked in the day and came out at night appeared out of thin air. "Why are there so many?" Li Yifeng was surprised. Chen Hao and the others also frowned slightly. After they entered the ruins, although they sensed the aura of demonic beasts, they had never encountered them. They thought that there was an error in the information transmitted by the token, or there was a problem with the range they entered. But at this moment, the billowing aura of demonic beasts clearly told them that danger was coming. "Chen Hao, quickly break the restriction and enter the palace. Everything will be fine. The more palaces you destroy, the more demonic beasts there will be. Last time in the Pure Yang Palace, because you didn't destroy a restriction, no demonic beasts appeared." At this moment, Phoenix's weak and tender voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. "Seeking monthly votes. Recommendation votes. Thank you, I will update 4 chapters today. Today's monthly votes are only 11. Brothers and sisters, do you want Wuxian to rest and only update 2 chapters tomorrow? Vote for me if you have monthly votes. Please." Chapter 178. Third update, begging for monthly votes. Wuxian continues to write the 4th update. Forcefully writing with low efficiency. Brothers and sisters who still have monthly votes, please vote for Wuxian. I need it, I really need it. I only have 18 votes now, and I've been left far behind by the 3rd place. I've already voted 4 or 5 times. No matter how passionate I am, it's all gone. Kill our way out. Hearing Little Bird's voice, Chen Hao suddenly understood what was going on. He frowned slightly for a moment, but he did not listen to Little Bird's suggestion. Instead, he said coldly to Tantai Lian and the others. The weak Tantai Lian looked at Chen Hao in surprise. Obviously, she had also heard the news from Phoenix. However, Chen Hao was obviously very good at breaking formations. Why didn't he do that? Without waiting for Tantai Lian to ask, Chen Hao took the lead and flew into the air. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Enai Jianpain also took a deep breath and followed. Seeing this, Tantai Lian had no choice but to muster up her remaining mental strength and follow him. She really did not understand how Chen Hao, who had also gone through a big battle, could still be so lively. In the face of countless flying monstrous beasts, Chen Hao and the others approached the core of the ancient ruins while crazily killing monstrous beasts. Most of these monstrous beasts had the strength of a rank 6 to rank 7 martial grandmaster. Occasionally, a rank 8 or even a rank 9 martial grandmaster would appear. Chen Hao was able to meet the strong ones immediately. When the 4 of them were in real danger, he was able to save them in time. However, under normal circumstances, even if they were seriously injured, Chen Hao would not care. The cruel training had finally officially begun for Tantai Lian, Yang Fan, and the others. 6 months passed in a flash. Originally, they thought that Tai Zigong, who had escaped, would rope in the disciples of the sect and cause trouble. However, for 6 months, they did not meet him again. Other than entering the ancient ruins to cultivate, the 5 of them were crazily killing monstrous beasts. Everyone's strength had increased tremendously. Yang Fan and Li Yifeng both caught up to Enai Jianpain. The 3 of them had all increased their cultivation to rank 6 martial ancestor realm. Especially Yang Fan, who had finally comprehended the true essence of the wind attribute in the cruel battle. His sword was extremely terrifying. As for Tantai Lian, in this unimaginably cruel training and battle, in addition to the inheritance of the Phoenix, she had risen from the 6th grade of Yizong to the 8th grade of Yizong. Her battle prowess was far above Yang Fan, and the other 2. Even against the top experts on the imperial rankings, he could stand up to them. But compared to Chen Hao, the four of them had the urge to find a piece of tofu and kill themselves. Ninth grade Grandmaster. Yes, he was a ninth grade Grandmaster. Even Chen Hao didn't expect the five of them to improve at such a speed. He especially didn't expect himself to be so fast. This was related to the fact that he had broken the forbidden formation and completely obtained the inheritance of the ruins. Coupled with the crazy hunting of demonic beasts and battles, the speed at which Tantai Lian and the others improved far surpassed that of the other disciples. However, the main reason why Chen Hao could advance so quickly was because of the energy in his body. It had completely turned into a liquid state. What did this mean? It meant that for the same size of Dantian, after storing liquid energy, the energy would be hundreds or thousands of times more powerful. He didn't have any realm barriers. With sufficient energy, his breakthrough was like a hot knife through butter. It took him less than 6 months to advance from the 2nd grade to the 9th grade of Zone. On average, he broke through more than 1 grade per month. When the energy in his Dantian was completely refined into a liquid state, he finally broke through to the 9th grade of Zone. 6 months of experience had finally come to an end. Unfortunately, although they had been reminded by the Phoenix, the 5 of them still didn't find the so-called inheritance of the 5 divine beasts. Amidst the pillars of light that shot up into the sky, the cultivators scattered all over the relic disappeared one after another. When Chen Hao and the other 4 walked out of a huge transmission formation at the same time, except for Chen Hao, the faces of Tantai Lian and the other 3 were filled with excitement. 6 months had been too cruel for them. No matter what, they had never imagined that training with Chen Hao would allow them to reach such a terrifying level. Of course, they had never imagined that they would be able to improve to such an extent. At this moment, the relaxed feeling was very fulfilling. They had worked hard and risked their lives. Now they had obtained the results they deserved. Chen Hao's expression was calm. His handsome face was even more mature. He didn't deliberately restrain his aura, nor did he deliberately release it. However, at this moment, anyone who saw him for the first time could feel an incomparably powerful aura. Every move, even a look, seemed to contain the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. Ah, we're finally out. Phew. I'm really looking forward to the real 100 Empire ranking competition. Figures, alone and in groups, rushed out of the transmission formation one after another. Their expressions were filled with excitement. Obviously, including the experience in the Endless Sea, a full 9 months of hard work had brought about astonishing improvements. However, after everyone walked out of the transmission formation and sighed, they looked at the huge martial arts practice field outside the transmission formation's exit. Directly above the rostrum of the martial arts practice field, there was a huge black pagoda monument standing tall. At this moment, the black pagoda monument was shining with a bright golden light. The names of all the cultivators were constantly flashing on it. Some were rising, some were falling, and some were not moving at all. Obviously, the mysterious black pagoda monument was still doing the final statistics of the combat strength rankings. At the front of the black pagoda monument, there were hundreds of powerful auras. They were obviously experts from the sects, and they were also staring at the black pagoda monument with bright eyes. Dongfeng Ting and Xian Xian were also among them. Thousands of disciples who were on experience immediately rushed to the martial arts practice field. They were so excited that even their bodies were trembling. Their eyes were wide open as they looked at the black pagoda monument. Everyone knew that the ranking on the pagoda monument this time would be the preliminary ranking of their 100 Empire ranking. Although it was not completely real, it possessed absolute authority. The disparity would not be too great. SSSS, SSSS, SSSS. A majestic and dense aura accompanied the resplendent golden light. When the transfer array gradually disappeared and no more cultivators walked out, the resplendent golden light on the black pagoda tablet finally began to weaken until it completely disappeared. One by one the golden names finally stopped. Gao Jianfei. Voila! When they saw the name at the top of the black pagoda monument, countless cultivators immediately cried out in alarm. The Wind Cloud Empire's Gao Jianfei was already someone that everyone knew. He was originally ranked 2nd. However, at this moment he was ranked first. Ming Yi, who was originally ranked first, was now ranked second. What shocked all the cultivators, including the sex experts, were the two people ranked third and 10th, Leng Yihan and Chen Hao. When Leng Yihan and Chen Hao started their training, they were both rank 8 martial emperors. However, at this moment, one was ranked third, and the other was ranked 10th. After all, he had defeated two rank 6 martial ancestor realm participants ranked third in the Sky Tyrant Empire. However, although the rank 8 martial emperor Chen Hao was ranked first in the Xuanwu Empire, the person ranked below him was only a rank 2 martial ancestor realm. Yet now, Chen Hao had risen to 10th, and obtained the qualifications to become a seated participant. This was simply unimaginable. Dong Fongting rubbed her eyes. She thought that she was seeing things. However, Chen Hao's name was indeed ranked 10th. Xian also opened her little mouth in shock. She did not dare to believe her eyes. Following that, cries of alarm began to sound from the entire martial practice ground. They were either cries of joy after seeing their own rankings, or sighs of disappointment after seeing their own rankings. Or they were shocked by the rankings of someone they knew. When Tantai Lian and the others saw that Chen Hao was ranked 10th, other than being pleasantly surprised, they did not seem to be surprised in the slightest. That was the truth. At this moment, no one knew better than the four of them how abnormal Chen Hao was. When Chen Hao was a rank 2 martial ancestor realm, he was able to kill rank 7 martial ancestor realm cultivators like killing chickens. Now that he was a rank 9 martial ancestor realm cultivator, who could possibly defeat him? To the four of them, being ranked 10th did not match Chen Hao's true battle strength at all. 30th. Chen Hao, I'm rank 30. After Tantai Lian saw her own ranking, she immediately spoke in a pleasantly surprised manner. In the past, she had been ranked last. Even now, when she recalled the situation back then, she felt embarrassed. Fortunately, Chen Hao had reminded her in time. As for now, she was able to increase her ranking to such a level. Tantai Lian knew very well that it was all thanks to Chen Hao. I'm ranked 123. Yang Fan also said in a slightly excited manner. 249. Enai Jianpain said as he clenched his fist. Damn. I'm the lowest, only 282. Li Yifeng seemed to be very dissatisfied as he spoke. However, the smile on his face showed that he was very satisfied. Not bad. I believe that your true battle strength should be higher. Chen Hao said with a slight smile. Chen Hao, thank you. Yang Fan said as he stared at Chen Hao. Thank you. Without you, we wouldn't have our current results. No need to thank me. We're brothers, don't treat me as an outsider. Haha. Li Yifeng, who was more carefree than Yang Fan and Enai Jianpain, said bluntly. However, the way he looked at Chen Hao was no different from the way he looked at the other two. Tantai Lian's face was slightly red, but she did not say anything. This is only the preliminary rankings. The real competition has yet to begin. Don't relax now. Chen Hao said. Of course not. Chen Hao, not bad. What a strong aura. At this moment, a voice entered Chen Hao's ears. The arrogant Leng Yihan appeared in front of Chen Hao out of thin air. His sharp eyes carried an aura of inspection as he looked at Chen Hao with surprise. Tantai Lian, Yang Fan and the other three were slightly surprised. They did not know that Chen Hao and Leng Yihan knew each other. They thought that he was looking for trouble. The four of them immediately stood beside Chen Hao. You're not bad either. Third place, much higher than me. Chen Hao said with a slight smile as he gently waved his hand at Tantai Lian and the other three. You've improved more than me. Leng Yihan said as he looked at Tantai Lian and the other three. His eyes also carried a trace of shock as he said. It seems that your encounters are quite interesting. If I had known earlier, I would have been with you. I'm only a 6th grade martial ancestor now. Grade is just a concept. It doesn't affect you, Chen Hao said. Hearing Chen Hao's words, Leng Yihan shook his head slightly and said, It seems that I still need to break through a little. Chen Hao, do you want to bet with me? Bet. What bet? Bet on the rankings. In the final ranking, I'll be higher than you. Promise me one thing. If you're higher than me, I'll promise you one thing. 4th place may not be in good condition after midnight. For those who can't wait, you can look at it tomorrow. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote for it at Chidian.com. Chapter 179. Bet, I like it. But you have to tell me what the conditions are, right? Chunhao stared at Lung Yihan after a moment of surprise. You can name your conditions. Of course, I can name my conditions as well. It's just a bet for the sake of a bet. Of course, whether it's you or me, the conditions must be approved by the other party. In other words, we have to discuss it and can't force the other party to do something they don't want to do. Is that okay? Lung Yihan's lips curled into a provocative smile as he stared at Chunhao. However, his heart was far from being as calm as he appeared on the surface. Okay. I also look forward to fighting with you. Let's bet. Chunhao said readily. It's a deal. Lung Yihan said as he extended his hand to Chunhao. Chunhao smiled. With a snap, he held Lung Yihan's hand tightly. What made Chunhao flabbergasted was that this fellow's height was obviously not much different from his own. But his hand was an entire fist smaller than his own. The feeling of holding it, it was like, cough cough. Chunhao hurriedly let go of his hand and said, deal. As soon as Lung Yihan left, a figure appeared in front of Chunhao out of thin air. Senior sister. Seeing Dongfeng Ting, Chunhao immediately smiled and shouted. As for Xian, Chunhao only nodded. Congratulations. I really didn't expect you to be a seated player. Your improvement is also amazing. Dongfeng Ting was pleasantly surprised as she looked at Chunhao's group of 5 with a trace of shock in her eyes. She said, I think you can all go to a good sect. That's right. This time, you have won glory for our Xuanwu Empire. Chunhao, Tantai Lian, Yang Fan, and I Jianpain Li Yifeng senior sister. I can now guarantee you that no matter what your final ranking is on the 100 Empire ranking, our sword faction will take you in. At that time, with senior sister here, I guarantee you will be valued by the sect. At this moment, Xian's figure mysteriously appeared before the 5 of them. She glanced at Dongfeng Ting with an arrogant expression and smiled at the 5 of them. Originally, she only had eyes for Chunhao. Yang Fan and I Jianpain and Li Yifeng were nothing in her eyes, not to mention Tantai Lian, who was the weakest back then. But now, the 4 of them, especially Tantai Lian, had increased their strength to an inconceivable level. As long as she was willing, she would definitely be able to enter a powerful sect that was at least a 6th grade sect. Yang Fan and the other 2 could also attract the attention of powerful sects above the 6th rank. After all, there were close to 4,000 disciples on the 100 Empire ranking, and they were all in the top 300. They were definitely outstanding. Xian said so because she couldn't guarantee what Chunhao and Tantai Lian would do. After all, their rankings were too high and they had more choices. However, Yang Fan and I Jianpain and Li Yifeng should be very happy. However, what she didn't expect was that no matter if it was Chunhao, Tantai Lian, or Yang Fan's group of 3, they actually weren't excited at all. It was even to the extent that they looked at her with strange gazes. What? Could it be that you don't like our flying sword faction? Xian's expression changed slightly as she looked at the 5 of them and asked. Senior sister Xian, I'm sorry. Originally, we might have chosen the flying sword faction. After all, we have senior sister's protection. But now, forgive me for being blunt, but we'd rather go to a low-grade sect than the flying sword faction. Li Yifeng didn't even frown as he spoke frankly and straightforwardly. Why? Xian looked a little embarrassed as she stared at Li Yifeng and asked. If it weren't for our luck, we would have died at the hands of your flying sword faction disciples. We don't want to go in and be suppressed. What? There's such a thing? That's the truth, Yang Fan said indifferently. How is that possible? Our sect's disciples who went on the training specially emphasized before the training to not have any conflicts with your 100 Empire ranking disciples. Tell me no matter who it is, I'll report it to the elders and punish them severely. Don't worry. What's that disciple's name? Xian asked with a trace of anger. Clearly, she was very dissatisfied with the person who had ruined her recruitment of her own people and her strength in the flying sword faction. How can there be no one? Come here, all of you. When Xian came to find Chen Hao, the Flying Sword faction elder who was with her looked at the name on the black pagoda stele twice, but still couldn't find the person he was looking for. At this moment, he stood up and transmitted his voice to the lesser heaven stage outer sect disciples of the Flying Sword faction, who had already gathered to participate in the training. Elder. Tai Zigong was the first to rush over. His expression was unsightly. Fan Fong's sister Fan Yin, did you meet her? Elder. I met her. She's dead. She was killed by someone. Forgive this disciple's incompetence, but the person is very strong. What? Who is it? The elder asked in shock. Tai Zigong was the strongest disciple of the Flying Sword faction who had comprehended the true meaning of half-step space energy. How could he have seen her and been unable to protect her? Who could be so strong? The one ranked 10th on the pagoda stele, Chen Hao. Ah. The elder was dumbfounded when he heard this familiar name. Chen Hao was the person Xian wanted to rope in, and also the person the Flying Sword faction wanted to win over. How could there be such a coincidence? It's that. Why is Senior Xian with them? Tai Zigong had long noticed the position of Chen Hao and the others, but he didn't dare to disturb the elder when he was looking at the pagoda stele. He didn't expect that in such a short time, Senior Xian, an inner sect disciple of the Flying Sword faction, would be standing with Chen Hao and the others, as if they were talking about something. Xian was the genius girl of the Flying Sword faction, and if there were no accidents, she would be promoted to a core disciple in less than a year. She was also a well-known figure in the Flying Sword faction. That Chen Hao can defeat you. The elder's expression became extremely conflicted as he stared at Tai Zigong and asked. He's very strong. At that time, he had just entered the Shenwu relic. He was only a low-grade martial great master, but together with the girl called Tantai Lian, he obtained the inheritance of the Phoenix. The inheritance of the Phoenix? You're saying Chen Hao obtained the inheritance of the Phoenix? The elder asked in shock. Yes, elder. I'm no match for him. And, even if Chen Hao didn't use the power of the inheritance, he wasn't any weaker than me at that time, and now, he should be even stronger. Tai Zigong didn't want to admit it, but when he thought of the battle with Chen Hao, he had to admit it. And since he couldn't save Fan Yin, he couldn't say that he was stronger than Chen Hao. Hearing Tai Zigong's affirmative answer, the elder was shocked and helpless at the same time. Fan Fong was a rare genius in the Flying Sword faction. Although he was only an inner sect disciple now, he had only been in the Flying Sword faction for 2 years, and he already had the ability to challenge a core disciple, but his level was not enough. He was much stronger than Xian. He was someone that even the Flying Sword faction leader thought highly of. If not, he wouldn't have been so concerned about Fan Fong's request. But now, what a sin. We can only ignore this matter. Sigh. If it wasn't for this conflict, if Chen Hao could enter the Flying Sword faction, the elder shook his head and said. He didn't know if Xian could pull Chen Hao into the Flying Sword faction, but looking at the current situation, there was probably no hope. He seemed to see a situation where Fan Fong would fight to the death with Chen Hao. If Chen Hao entered the Flying Sword faction, it wouldn't take long for him to be killed. If he entered other factions, he would also be hunted down by Fan Fong. And if Chen Hao could grow up smoothly, it was hard to say who would win and who would die in the future between him and Fan Fong. The inheritance of the Phoenix was one of the most powerful inheritances in the legends of the Shenwu ruins, and even in the world of cultivation, it couldn't be taken lightly. Plus, Chen Hao's abnormal talent. Let's call him Tai Zigong. Li Yifeng said. Tai Zigong? Xian frowned slightly. Obviously, she didn't know much about outer sect disciples. Okay, he's just a small outer sect disciple. Don't worry, I guarantee that he will be punished according to the sect rules, and won't dare to do anything against you. That's not important. At this moment, Chen Hao suddenly said, Tai Zigong just wanted to save someone, and I killed someone. Her name is Fan Yin. I heard that her brother is. What? You killed Fan Yin? Senior Xian, you know? Seeing Xian's shocked expression, Chen Hao frowned slightly and asked, Xian didn't know the names of outer sect disciples, but Fan Yin, a disciple on the 100 Empire ranking, was known to Xian. Immediately, Chen Hao understood that Xian's brother must be a very famous person in the Flying Sword faction. Not only do I know you, Sai, forget it. I originally wanted to pull you into the Flying Sword faction, so that you can have some help when I become a core disciple. But now it seems that it's impossible. If I pull you in, even I won't be able to save your lives. Chen Hao, you can choose as high-level a sect as you can. Also, after entering the sect, no matter what mission it is, you must be careful when you come out. Fan Yin's brother, Fan Fong, is a super genius of the century in the Flying Sword faction. He was promoted to an inner sect disciple in 2 years, and broke through from the martial ancestor realm to the golden core realm. Alright, that's it. Work hard. Our Xuanwu Empire has never had such good results, but if you die in Fan Fong's hands, everything will be gone. After Xian finished speaking, she stared deeply at Chen Hao, shook her head and floated away. Dongfang Ting also looked at Chen Hao in astonishment. Chen Hao's expression didn't change at all. Instead, a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said, "Senior sister, I suddenly feel that Xian is just a little arrogant and overbearing. In fact, she's not that annoying. You still have the mood to think about this?" Dongfang Ting stared at Chen Hao. "Then what should I think about? I've heard of Fan Fong. There are many geniuses in the sect. Those who are promoted to the sect from the 100 Empire ranking are all mediocre. Fan Fong, on the other hand, stands out from the crowd. Most of the talented direct disciples in the world of cultivation cannot compare to him. Xian is right. You must be careful. Seeking monthly votes. Seeking recommendation votes. I didn't expect to complete the mission in advance. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.